suspect? Could this be the result of foul play? All we know at this point from employees walking around the terminal, coming in and out, showing up for work now to prepare for this emergency situation, is that there have not been any specific threats that they have been made aware of toward this aircraft or toward any other TWA aircraft or toward any other aircraft in the past few days.
All right, Andrew, thank you. We are, as is often the case in these stories that are breaking, we get a lot of conflicting information. The truth eventually emerges. But as far as the number of people on that aircraft, we are told by another TWA employee that there were actually 32 crew members on board the plane because one crew was heading back to Paris to finish their shift, and there was an active crew and then a crew that was riding or deadheading, as they call it, back, not doing anything. According to the wires, lately the number of passengers and crew on board total 281. That differs sharply from what we're hearing from the police officer Andrew is quoting, which is...
Welcome back, everyone. Jim Benneman reporting live tonight from the Northwest News Channel. You've been watching our friends at WNBC in New York, giving you the very latest on this TWA crash off Long Island, New York. 281 people on board that 747. There are no signs of survivors. For the very latest now from NBC, we go to Robert Hager.
A TWA 747 bound from New York to Paris crashed tonight 20 miles after takeoff from New York's JFK Airport. The crash occurred off the coast of Long Island. 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. There are no reports of survivors. Reports vary how many were aboard. Some say 249, some say 281. It will take hours to sort out the facts, but it appears all those aboard were lost. Some bodies have already been recovered. A temporary morgue has been set up on shore. There are several reports that the plane exploded in midair. Eyewitnesses described two flashes and said the plane may have come down in two pieces before it hit the water. That has immediately led to speculation that terrorism might have been involved. It's dangerous to draw any conclusions at this very early hour, but the crash bears eerie similarities to the crash of Pan Am 103 several years ago. That was also a 747 bound from Heathrow Airport in London to New York, and it too crashed just after takeoff, but already at some altitude. Terrorism is on everyone's mind just now, with the U.S. Olympics scheduled to open on Friday evening. But again, it is very early in the hours after this crash. It will take days, perhaps weeks, to sort out the details. Robert Hager in Atlanta, now back to you.
All right, Robert Hager, thanks very much. People, if you're turning in to watch NBC primetime programming, of course, we've got some updated information we're trying to pass along tonight on a major breaking story off the coast of Long Island. TWA Flight 800 leaving JFK Airport there in New York City late this afternoon, our time, bound for Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, exploded, went down in the waters off Long Island, about 10 miles off the coast of Long Island. 1 people on board. It is feared at this point that there are no survivors. Indeed, the Coast Guard that is out at the scene reports no sign of survivors. There had been reports that life rafts were seen in the water, of course, buoying hopes that perhaps some people had survived that crash, but at this point there is no sign that anyone managed to make it out alive. Right now we're going to send it back to the late news in its early stages, 11 o'clock back on the East Coast. Chuck Scarborough with our sister station WNBC.
Dignified as they possibly can. We saw clergy members, what I believe to be one rabbi, walk into the terminal, no doubt there to make the breaking of the news, the handling of the information as sensitive as possible. Chuck.
All right, Andrew, thank you. This would be an appropriate time, I think, to go back to a telephone number TWA has set up to discuss and give information to people who had relatives, friends, or anybody on that aircraft. If you want information about somebody who was on TWA Flight 800 this evening, bound for Paris from JFK Airport, call 800-438-9892. That is the TWA hotline number, and please call that only if you want specific information about somebody who you feel was on board that flight. They will help you as best they can in this very difficult hour. As I continue to look at the wires here to try to get the latest information for you, we now see that there were 249 passengers, 32 crew, the latest count on the flight. That's according to Steve Sapp of the United States Coast Guard. Again, Sapp says we're not finding any survivors. We are locating lots of bodies. TWA Chang is standing by with more information for us. TWA, where are you?
Well, Chuck, we're right here. We're approaching the area. We're not there yet, but I've talked to a source in the Port Authority, and he says that at this point, the plane, they believe, has already gone under the water, that there are no lifeboats, and the flares are actually flares dropped by the Coast Guard. The TWA 800, by the way, was a 100 series 747. That's the oldest one. It's 25 to 30 years old, according to a Port Authority police officer who noted that they are now saying there are 198 passengers and 14 crew members on board the TWA Flight 800 that left at 8:12 and apparently crashed around 8:30. He's noting that that at night we should make sure that the witnesses we hear talking about an explosion, that a lot of times in airplane crashes when a plane flames out at night, they view it and think it's an explosion, but it could be a huge engine flame out, but we don't know that yet. The worst news, though, is that the Coast Guard is telling Port Authority police that the plane is down and that there are no lifeboats coming out, and they believe the plane has already gone underwater.
All right, thank you very much, TWA. Once again, the plane, we're getting some more information now about exactly when the plane went down. The latest is now not 8:30, but about 8:45. According to the FAA, the plane vanished from radar at 8:45 this evening. It departed the terminal, we're told, as you heard earlier, from Kennedy Airport at 7 o'clock. So obviously there was some sort of delay between departing the terminal on time and actually getting airborne. The plane was no more than 70 or 80 miles from JFK Airport heading east toward Paris when it, for reasons that are still mysterious right now, did plunge from the sky and crash into the ocean. Now we are told about 20 miles off Mauritius Inlet at the east end of Long Island, which is about 110 miles long. The crash site depicted on this graphic you see right here is about accurate, and that's where the biggest explosion was seen and where the rescue operation, search and rescue, continues. But now, more than 2 hours after the crash, we still have no word of any survivors, and that is grim news for those who had loved ones on that aircraft. Of course, we will continue to hope for better news. So let me just visit the control room for just a second here, if you'll stand by, and find out who we have and what we're going to talk about next. All right, let me give you the passenger information hotline while everybody tries to get their act together in the control room right now. One more time, it's 1-800-438-9892. That is the passenger information hotline. If you think you have a loved one on that aircraft, would like information about who was on the plane, if you think somebody connected with you was on that aircraft, this is the number to call: 1-800-438-9892. TWA Flight 800, bound for Paris tonight from JFK Airport. And say again, please. Okay. Chuck Gomez just joined me here. Tell me what you've got.
Well, Chuck, one of the things that's very interesting, recently when there was the airplane crashes, we haven't had them over water, and covering one just a few years ago at LaGuardia when the plane just went off the ramp there. It's hard for these rescue crews to get out there, and flares have been dropped, but the rescue effort becomes very difficult at a time like this. Oh,
absolutely. Especially over the water. Now, of course, the Coast Guard, as I mentioned earlier, the Coast Guard had mustered as many aircraft as it had available in the area right now. They put up 6 helicopters with searchlights to try to find survivors in the water. They were flying at least one Falcon jet over the area. They had several small craft that were going out to try to effect the rescue. And as we heard from John Miller, who was on board a small craft heading toward the area.
Welcome back to the News Channel. You've been watching New York veteran anchor Chuck Scarborough describing the situation back there. It was at about 5:45 p.m. Portland time. That was into the 8:45 hour back in New York this evening when that TWA 747 Flight 800, bound from Kennedy Airport in New York to De Gaulle Airport in Paris, plunged into the waters of the Atlantic Ocean about 12 miles off the coast, the eastern edge of Long Island. Obviously, that sent a major rescue effort scrambling, but the people there at the Coast Guard back along the eastern seaboard say that there are no signs of survivors. In fact, they are reporting the grim news that now some of the victims' bodies are starting to wash up. So, again, it has gone from a rescue effort for possible survivors to trying to pick up the bodies of those who didn't make it out alive from that crash. 281 people on board that TWA jet. We're monitoring several sources to bring you the very latest coverage on this tragedy back east. Right now, we're going to send it to CNN.
Then what I have presented, that we've launched a team of people. The vice chairman will be in charge of this team, and they will be there within hours.
All right. Given the fact that this aircraft went down over the open ocean, what sort of special challenges does that present your teams with, and how do you respond to that?
Well, of course, in the past, we had an accident earlier this year with in the Dominican Republic, which we had to work with the Navy, United States Navy, in recovering the wreckage. and we probably will again have to look to the Navy to assist us in wreckage recovery.
Does the NTSB assist in any way with any of the search and rescue effort at this stage?
No, I'm confident that a very competent job is being done by the appropriate authorities in Long Island and in New York State in regard to that. At this point in time, we will strictly be looking, and our investigators will be up there to be looking at the cause of the accident. We'll coordinate, obviously, with the other federal agencies that are presently on their way to this site. And as facts are known, and as we come up with information, then that will obviously be shared with both the media and the American people. But at this point in time, as I say, speculation, I'm sure, is something that the media is interested in, but as we saw with the ValueJet accident, what people feel at the initial part of these investigations sometimes or right after the accident may or may not be the cause of the accident. So as soon as we have our folks up there and they're presently on their way and we develop the information, we'll start in the morning releasing the information as we know it.
All right, Jim Hall, Chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, thank you very much for joining us. We're now joined by Bob Hawk of the Federal Aviation Administration, who is joining us tonight to make a statement. Mr. Hawk, are you there?
Whether there are any survivors. Call, Bill.
CNN, please go.
New York 1?
Yes, CNN.
All right, we're having a little bit of audio difficulty getting him on the line. Okay, Bob Hawk, are you there?
It's going to take me a second. I have to put something for the wall.
All right, let us give him a second to get himself set. In the meantime, why don't we put up the 1-800 number for families who would like to get...
Back to the Northwest News Channel, everyone. Again, if you're just joining NBC and the News Channel tonight, we're trying to keep you up to date on this tragedy developing off the coast of Long Island, New York. 281 people were on board a TWA 747 that left late this afternoon from Kennedy Airport there in New York, bound for Paris. It didn't make it more than 75 or 80 miles off the edge of the runway before it went down into the waters of the Atlantic, about 10 to 20 miles off the coast of Long Island. Again, 281 people on board that TWA flight. There are no signs of survivors, but indeed signs that already some of the dead are starting to wash up. And so that is where the rescue efforts are being focused right now. Right now, we're going to send it back to WNBC in New York.
Lights in the water in the vicinity of the actual crash. You'll be showing that to us? You can't see that?
You can see it off in the distance at about 2 o'clock off at our distance. I'm going to try and pull out and show it to you here. Just bear with me a second. It is very, very dark out here as we come off to the distance. Right now, we're panning over to the right, and we're looking off toward the side of the helicopter. It gives you an idea of how dark outside it is. There's some ships right there in the foreground, a barge right there in the foreground. Right out in the distance, it's, again, very, very dark. We're just off the south shore, about 12 miles off in the distance. There is a glowing red light. We can see some glowing red lights. We can see some flashing helicopters in the distance as we keep inching forward here. We're flying east right now along the south shore, and just in the very, very distance, if we can make it out here, there is a little bit of a red glow in the distance where we can see it. That appears to be about 12 miles off the shore. We can see some of the rescue effort. Again, as I said, ATC is telling us there. Now you can start to make it out in the camera as we continue zooming in. ATC is telling us they're keeping us at about 10 miles away from the crash scene. There you can see the glowing, some of the glowing,
what's causing that glow?
Horizon.
That's the crash site itself?
That is what we're told is the crash site. Again,
and what would be causing the glow?
Miles away.
I'm sorry, Tom, what's causing the glow, do you suppose?
Again, it appears to be rescue boats at this time, is what we're being told. That it does not appear to be any fires that we're seeing in the distance. I'm going to try and take you in a little bit closer here. Now we're looking again. You can see the flashing lights in the distance. Those appear to be rescue boats, and you can see some flashing. You see a couple of white flashes in the area. Those are the anti-collision lights. Sorry about the signal. Bear with us here for a second. Those flashing white lights that you see around them, those are anti-collision lights and position lights on helicopters, rescue helicopters in the scene. Bear with us while our signal is breaking up here a little bit. We're going to turn back to the south. You can see some of the flashing lights in the distance.
And again, we're about 12 miles offshore. So that's a long row of lights. It seems to be stretching for about a mile long. Out in the distance there, you can see another helicopter very high above the scene itself.
Tom, as a pilot,
yes,
you've been listening to what's been said, the eyewitness reports, and Ira Furman, who I think is still on the phone. You with us, Ira?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. Tom, what is your opinion about what might have happened?
Again, it would be just purely speculation at this point, but obviously some type of explosion. The aircraft obviously quickly went down. I mean, taking off from JFK, it's just a very, very short distance. It would have been a very, very quick flight from the time they took off from JFK to the time they were out over the water here. And then by the time that it actually struck the water, it would have been a very brief time. Some type of very, very tragic and rapid explosion.
And Ira, what are the other possibilities? You said you could have had some kind of airframe failure or an upset of the aircraft. What would have caused that?
There's a whole variety of things. I mean,
now we're seeing flares. You can see some flares there in the distance going off.
Okay. If you're going to speculate, the range of speculation is almost infinite in terms of what could have caused an upset at this stage of the takeoff operation. I really can't speculate on that, but it is reasonable to allow for the possibility that what we had here is some kind of failure on the aircraft that is not associated with some nefarious conduct by somebody. It could have been something in terms of cargo that was being held. It could have been a sudden decompression that somehow upset the aircraft. And of course, it could have been much like the incident that occurred where an engine exploded. An engine explosion itself could cause some damage to the aircraft that might have caused the pilots to lose control. Again, the range of speculation is endless, but the fact of people seeing fire and hearing an explosion does not mean it was an explosion on board the aircraft, but could have been an explosion sound coming from the engines backfiring during a very, very rapid descent.
Ira, in cases where you have actually investigated or been intimately familiar with the investigation of aircraft that have crashed falling out of the sky, not flown into a mountain, not run out of fuel, but have simply had some kind of catastrophic failure and come out of the sky, what have been the most likely causes?
That's a tough one. At this stage of flight, I can't say that there have been that many accidents where planes have come out of the sky this way. Most often, it would be attributable to some weather phenomenon. For instance, icing on an aircraft has caused a few aircraft to come down simply because the wings don't have sufficient lift with ice on them. There have been instances of aircraft undergoing what's called an upset. The theory is that some 737s have been lost. Boeing 737s have been lost because of a problem with the rudder activating itself beyond the normal range and actually flipping the plane over.
The DC-10, Ira, the DC-10 had a period of time there where it was suffering explosive decompressions because of a baggage door problem that occurred at about 12,000 feet on climb-out, wasn't it?
Well, there was one that occurred in Paris. That was a horrific air crash. And there was another instance of a problem with a door in a DC-10, I believe, in Canada. That's a problem that's since been remedied. Something like that is possible, but again, I don't know what it would be in this instance. It could be some kind of problem with a flight control surface. It could even be an instance of pilot incapacitation. We don't know.
All right, Ira Furman, stand by if you would. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go here to Chuck Gomez. You have some fresh information for us, Chuck.
Yes, we understand Mike Kelly of the TWA recently held a news conference. He said the emergency notification system has been activated. He says that according to his records, there are 29 in first class, 183 passengers in coach, 17 crew members, 3 in the cockpit, and 14 flight attendants. He again asks people who might have relatives on that flight to call 1-800-438-9892. And that news conference is going on as we speak.
And when he says the emergency notification system's been activated, he means that they are actively reaching out and notifying people who have relatives in the airplane.
And in fact, in the newsroom when I came in this evening, there was a gentleman who believed that he had relatives aboard that flight. He was very concerned. He was asking for information. Of course, at that time, we did not have full information, and this number is being provided for anybody who wants some information at this time.
Okay. We have John Miller, who is standing by right now. John was in one of the boats, and I think if we can get the pictures from Chopper 4 of the crash scene, John, you're out there somewhere.
Yeah, we're still a couple of miles off, headed in that direction. We can see a lot of the activity there. Monitoring the Coast Guard Channel 16 emergency frequency, though, they are still massing a huge effort there. You can see all the blue lights in the water from the ships. Many civilian boats have turned out to help. They've given them an area to work from. They've asked for blankets. They've asked marinas to stay open to supply gasoline. But clearly, this is the beginning of what's going to be a major effort, certainly a long night that's going to go into a series of long days. As the rescue operators learned in the Miami crash, this is going to be very difficult to work with.
John, when you're monitoring the channel, have you heard any word about survivors being found?
We have heard sporadic reports of boats chasing objects in the water that they think are bodies, but basically because of the noise of the engines on this vessel, it's been hard to make out exactly what they've been finding as we're going at a pretty good clip towards the scene. But certainly there's a major search going on, and there is some debris.
All right, Tom Frick, you're still with us up at Chopper 4.
12 miles offshore. We're trying to, again, ATC is restricting aircraft and not involved directly in their rescue operation from approaching within 10 miles. We're trying to go over this site. We're actually going to try and take you over the what they call a temporary flight restriction over the area. If we can take you over and try and get you closer in. And again, you can see the flashing lights in the distance. Right now we're about 12 miles offshore. We're just south. We're about 1.5 miles to 2 miles off the south shore itself. So you can see how very, very, very dark it is. You can see the flashing lights. Those are flashing lights of rescue boats and helicopters. Those are flashing lights of position lights and what they call the anti-collision lights on the helicopters so that they clearly don't run into each other with all the activity going on out there. As you can tell, it is very dark out here. So you can tell this is going to be a very difficult rescue operation. There is, again, working 12 miles offshore in this kind of dark. It is very dark for us alone, let alone trying to perform a rescue operation. So you can imagine the difficulty that they're going to have out there.
Tom, are you equipped with a searchlight on that aircraft?
We have a searchlight. We don't have a sun gun light which we can illuminate it any more than this for you.
Okay, I'm just wondering if there's any possibility that you might be able to participate in the rescue, the search and rescue operation?
Well, we'll, obviously if requested, we'll participate. We'll add whatever we can help, but we don't have the type of equipment that would normally, we might just be actually in the way. So we don't really have the type of equipment that would assist in a rescue operation. I'm going to pull out here. I'm going to show you some of the shoreline. Again, we're about 12 miles off. I want to give you some idea. As we continue to pull out, you can see how dark and almost how the lights sort of disappear into the distance. I'm going to pan over here just to the north of the area as we keep coming across. You can see how dark. Now we're over the water. This is about 1.5 miles to 2 miles offshore. So there, now you can see the south shore of Long Island, the long stream of lights along the south shore. Again, it gives you an idea, a perspective of how far away it is and how far offshore and how difficult the rescue operation is going to be.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. We have now Long Island correspondent Carolyn Gussoff on the telephone. Carolyn?
Yeah, Chuck, I'm here at the scene, and it's really not at all what you might expect. It's desolate, it's dark, and it is very quiet. I guess it's because the closest that they're letting reporters right now is to the gate of the Coast Guard station of East Mauritius, and all the rescue emergency vehicles are all about 1 mile closer to the water than we are. So all you can see right now is a single airplane in the sky. I'm not sure if it's a helicopter or an airplane with searchlights on the water. You see dozens of ambulances in the distance. I'm told that there are at least 25, and also fire equipment, but it looks like none of it's being used, and it appears that there was some obviously major dash or rush to get to the scene, and now it appears as if not a single body has been recovered. I don't know if you're hearing differently, but certainly all these ambulances and rescue teams went in, and nobody's come out. So it's a grim scene here. A command post was set up at a fire station about 3 miles from the scene, and they're requiring reporters and even some volunteer firefighters who came here just hoping to be able to help. They're requiring everybody to walk to the scene to clear the roadways in case, rescue vehicles have to come out. But obviously, no known survivors and no ambulances rushing from this scene at all. As a matter of fact, I said it was grim. I came in here, I got a lift from an Army doctor who came, and he said that he presumed that all he would have to do is pronounce people dead. And I also met a pastor and a priest that came immediately from the East Moriches area when they heard. So it really just has been a very grim scene, a very quiet scene, and just a waiting game right now to see if anything is recovered.
All right, Carolyn, thank you very much. Robert Gaffney is the Suffolk County Executive. This is in his area. And Mr. Gaffney, can you tell me what your county is doing now to try to help in this effort?
Well, there's been a complete and massive mobilization of those units of the Suffolk County Police Department and our emergency services that would be able to assist the Coast Guard primarily in the search and rescue and to secure the scene from people who might, curiosity seekers and others who might want to just go down and in the process of gawking, if you will, interfere with any rescue effort. We have the Suffolk County Marine Bureau's boats are out, helicopters are out. We've got emergency medical services, and the medical examiner's office has been mobilized because we anticipate that hopefully we'll find survivors. But the one thing we know we'll find at this point certainly are a number of bodies, and those have to be attended to. Those things have to be taken care of. So at this point, the county set up its emergency services site at the Moriches Fire Department. We're monitoring what's happening from our Emergency Operations Center in Yaphank, and the police, fire department, sheriff's office, and our emergency medical personnel are on hand at the scene, mobilized and assisting the Coast Guard.
All right, I don't know if you can see a television set right now, but we have a shot from Chopper 4, Mr. Gaffney, and it's all the actual crash scene. The chopper was able to get closer, and what we are seeing on the water, 12 to 20 miles out, is fire. Yes. There is still fire burning on the water out there.
Apparently there was an incredible amount of fuel. The plane was carrying a lot of fuel. It was making a flight from JFK to de Gaulle Airport in Paris. So it was heavily laden with fuel, and whatever the cause of the explosion, there was a huge fireball. A lot of that is presumably still burning in the water just offshore. It's not a heavy sea, so that hasn't broken up.
All right, Robert Gaffney, if you'll stand by for just a moment, please. I want to see if we still have Ira Furman, the former NTSB investigator, on the line. All right, we lost Ira. I think that Tom Frick, let me talk with you about this. I think the fact that you still have a fire burning with this fuel on the surface of the water now might indicate, well, let me just speculate then here, too. This is pure speculation, but the fact that you have a fire still burning on the ocean indicates that a significant part of the plane with fuel in hit the ocean intact. Had there been an explosion, a serious explosion, when the plane was at 8,000 or 10,000 feet, one would presume the fuel would disperse more than this apparently is. That looks to me like we've got a lot of glowing wreckage in the water right now, and there is active fire still burning. That doesn't rule anything out, but it does indicate that a significant portion of the plane, I think, might have hit the water intact. I'm told we have a new telephone number now. The TWA is putting out for passengers, for people who want information about passengers on board TWA Flight 800 from JFK to Paris. And if you'll give me that telephone number, I will pass it on to the people at home. Let's put the hotline up if we can. An additional number. In addition to the 800-438-9892, we have a 718 number that you may call, 718-244-2656. This is for information about people who may have been on this flight tonight that ended quite tragically out in the water. Let's go back to Chopper 4's shot right now. I saw a moment ago a searchlight piercing through the dark into the scene of the crash. It's difficult to imagine looking at this now that anybody could have survived it. Tom Frick, can you hear us now?
Chuck. You're breaking up a little bit. We're coming over the scene. We're actually flying over what they call a temporary restricted flying area. You can see some helicopters using searchlights over the areas. We're coming a lot closer. Right now we're about 5 miles away and about close to 6,000 feet above the actual site. You can see all the flashing lights down in the water itself. As we pull out here, just want to show you there's a lot of search boats. You can see flashing a searchlight on an aircraft over here, just off to the left, looking down. Appeared to be looking down into the water. Looking down into the water just to the eastern end of all of this all of the activity going on. As you can see, this, as we take you over here, this one aircraft appears to be searching down in the water. They have a bright light on it. As we continue back to this area, this looks, obviously, is where the bulk of the activity is. This is as close as we can get in right now, as tight as we can get in with the shot. Of course, we're trying to get a little bit closer here, trying to come directly over the scene if we can. Again, a lot of lights, a lot of what appear to be, from here appears to be some flame still burning off of what appears to be wreckage in the water itself. Again, there are a lot of boats around the area, but those are the white lights around the area. The yellow lights appear to be what appears to be burning embers from this point. You can clearly make out right there in the center what appears to be a flame. It appears to be, again, we're at 6,000 feet in the air. That flame appears to be shooting up about 50 feet to 100 feet in the air from this perspective way up here. Again, as we pull out just a little bit, you can see a lot of the white lights. White lights are emergency vehicles around the area, and give you an idea how dark it is. This again is about 12 miles offshore. A lot of activity out here, a lot of helicopters. We've counted 10 helicopters so far, both from the Coast Guard and the National Guard. Again, they have what they call a temporary flight restriction around the area. We're flying above it right now, trying to stay out of the area, not to hamper any rescue effort. There, you can clearly make out what is a flame shooting up into the air in the center of what appears to be a lot of debris. And as we're coming a little bit closer here, you can begin to make out some type of shape in the water. It appears to, as we pull out here, you can it begins to make some kind of distinct oblong shape in the water itself. Off to the lower left-hand side, you can clearly make out a helicopter with a searchlight searching the waters. And again, we're all the way in and taking in as tight as I can here and show you the flames, what appear to be flames, what clearly are flames shooting up in the air off of what appears to be the debris of the aircraft.
In the lower left-hand part of the picture there, Tom, I think I see more flame.
Yes, there's
separated
flames
from the main body.
There's flames all over. As we pull out here, you can see all of the embers. All of those yellow lights are, again, embers, appear to be burning embers of the aircraft itself, or of debris of the aircraft. Just want to take you up here. This is the easternmost portion of it. The easternmost portion, you can see a lot of, there's a flame right in the center, what appears to be a large piece of the aircraft still burning. Again, very, very dark. A lot of aircraft circling the area. Not that many searchlights right now, but there are the white lights. If you can make out the difference, the white lights are the searchlights, and the yellow lights are clearly what appear to be glowing embers. It appears to have been, if you can get a perspective on this, this appears to have been strewn over about 1.5 miles to a 2-mile area. You can get an oblong perspective of it. We're flying along the side of it right now. You can get an oblong perspective flying. That's from the west to the east. Now we're coming around to the eastern side of it. Give you an idea. It appears to have clearly, you can get an idea of possibly how the direction the aircraft was flying, possibly when it hit, and how the aircraft continued to be strewn across the water. Again, we're taking you all the way in. We're about 12 miles offshore. You can see the burning embers. Now we can make out very distinctly what appears to be a large piece of the fuselage in the water. Now you can make out the water floating up and down. You can actually see the waves in the water itself. Chuck.
That's astonishing. Here we are. That plane went down at 8:45. We're now at 11:30 at night. The fire is still burning on the ocean.
There's a very large, what appear to be, from up here, very large pieces of fuselage and a lot of glowing embers still in the water. Again, you can make out a bit of the shape, but this is very, very dark out here. Trying to locate a helicopter, a rescue helicopter, looking for some of the debris. Again, we're told that the Coast Guard staging area we passed it just back off, is at Smith's Point. The Coast Guard staging area is at Smith's Point, about 12 miles back on shore.
Well, we have MG Perez standing by right there right now. MG, you're at the Coast Guard staging area, aren't you?
Yes, Chuck, I'm actually in East Moriches. Let me give you some perspective about how this is impacting the South Shore right now. I came in from western Nassau County driving down Sunrise Highway. Traffic is getting very heavy. I can also tell you that there were several state police rushing down Sunrise Highway headed east. East Moriches, for all intents and purposes at this point, is closed to all traffic. So anyone heading down Sunrise Highway headed east should divert and obviously take alternate routes. I can tell you that there are many police officers from all over both counties and surrounding areas who are here staging in this area, and they'll be used as becomes necessary. For the moment, the big problem on the South Shore is obviously directing traffic away from this crash scene.
MG, thank you very much. I think we just lost MG Perez. Anyway, Tom Frick is still up in Chopper 4, and we're keeping the picture here. And with me is Chuck Gomez. Chuck, you have some more information.
Yes, we understand Steve Sapp of the U.S. Coast Guard, he is saying that they are not finding any survivors at this time. He says they're locating a lot of bodies out there. Sapp says there was a report of life rafts floating in the water, and the National Transportation Safety Board says it's pulling together now a team to send to that scene. President Clinton has been briefed about the crash, but the White House has issued no formal statements at this time. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, Chuck, it was a Boeing 747-100. It's an early model of the giant airliner. It was first produced in 1970. It can carry as many as 450 passengers. Tonight it was carrying 29 in first class, 183 in coach, 17 in the crew, 3 in the cockpit, 14 flight attendants. And again, TWA is issuing a number for people who are concerned and who believe that they might have relatives aboard that flight. Chuck, did you want to add something?
Before we cut away to the number,
yes.
we now have, pardon me, we now have a closer shot of what is surely a vision of hell right now, the fiery end of TWA Flight 800. And Tom Frick, what do you see now?
Oh, yes, Chuck, we're still live over the scene here. Again, we're just orbiting around at 6,000 feet, coming back around here. Bear with me one moment. We're coming back around on the scene. We're just been told to clear a little bit further away. That's why you just temporarily, we just temporarily had to make a quick deviation from the area. There, now we're back on the scene. You can, we brought you back on the scene. We just got word from Coast Guard Otis Air Station, that the aircraft have returned to Suffolk County Airport. That 2 of the aircraft, rather, have returned to Suffolk County Airport, the airfield there, because they were over the crash site. They saw rafts in the water, but they did not see any people in the rafts. So that they, as of this time, they've returned to Suffolk Airfield, and they are refueling, and they're going to try to come right back out on station. That's the latest that we've heard. We were hearing that over the air traffic control frequencies out here. Again, you're seeing still a lot of burning debris in the area, and it's very dark. They're trying to bring the helicopters back on station as soon as they can, and some of them are returning, like I said, to Suffolk Airfield for additional fuel at this point. But they're not finding any survivors at this point in any of the rafts, according to Coast Guard Otis, what we're hearing at this point.
Tom, what's your fuel state?
Right now, our fuel state, I'm Steve Massey, my pilot up here, and myself, we've got about an hour on station.
Okay, good. Well, stay right there. Keep this picture up. And Carolyn Gussoff is standing by now on shore. Carolyn, what do you have?
Well, I'm right outside, Chuck, the Coast Guard station, which is really the closest staging area to this. And
welcome back, everyone. Jim Benneman reporting for you tonight from the news channel. You are watching WNBC's coverage from New York City. And just the unbelievable scene that we can see from their helicopter back there, their news helicopter, Chopper 4. Right now, we want to send you right back to that. As their reporter describes one of the situations being experienced on shore, we'd like to bring you up to speed on this terrible story that's developing off the coast of Long Island, New York. If you're just joining us tonight, a couple of hours ago, a TWA jetliner, flight number 800, that was a 747, bound from Kennedy Airport in New York to de Gaulle Airport in Paris, went down in the waters of the Atlantic about 80 miles after taking off, or about 12 miles or so off the coast of Long Island. At this hour, we know it was TWA Flight 800. We are getting some different versions of exactly how many people were on board. According to the Coast Guard, they said 281 people. Right there, we are showing you the number that has been passed along by the people at TWA. They are saying 229 people were on board. If indeed it was 281, that could make this the deadliest air disaster in United States history. But at 229 people, no reports of survivors. There were some early reports that perhaps some life rafts were being seen from the sky, but at this point they are only retrieving bodies. And right now, I think we really should go back to these incredible pictures from Chopper 4. This is the news gathering helicopter at WNBC in New York. There you see the fire still burning. This is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. about 12 miles off the coast of Long Island, New York, and that plane went down a couple of hours ago. How could those flames still be licking up like that at this hour? Well, as one expert said, for a flight from New York on to Paris, just 70 miles into the flight, just an enormously heavy load of fuel that, of course, was to propel that plane across the Atlantic Ocean on into de Gaulle Airport in Paris, and now all that fuel burning itself out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. At this point, the president has been briefed on the disaster. We understand that the White House has called a news conference that will be happening sometime later this evening. Jim Hall of the National Transportation Safety Board, indeed the chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, has dispatched the NTSB's GO team of investigators. They're going to go to the scene to perhaps try and find out what caused this tragedy. Some people who were witnesses, not only watching from shore, they're on Long Island, and this time of year, the east coast of Long Island, a very popular spot for tourists. Probably an awful lot of people saw what happened from the ground. Also, people flying smaller aircraft in the vicinity reported seeing some kind of explosion, and then the plane went down. Of course, that heightened fears that perhaps this was some sort of terrorist act, perhaps a bombing. We've heard from former NTSB investigators who say that based on the fact that the plane appeared to be mostly intact as it fell from the sky, they doubt that that was the case. They're suspecting some sort of just massive engine failure that might have precipitated this disaster. But again, that's what the NTSB investigators will be looking for. At least 229 people known dead. Again, you're watching the news channel's extended live coverage of the crash of TWA Flight 800, a 747 that went down tonight shortly after leaving New York, bound for Paris. And there is a live picture from Chopper 4, our sister station WNBC in New York. And right down below, you see some of the flashing lights, if you can make those out. That is part of just that armada of rescue vessels that was dispatched to the scene. But you can also see still an enormous amount of flame coming up from the water. And they say the pilot in Chopper 4 back in New York says it is his estimation that the crash scene in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, about 1.5 miles to 2 miles long, just a terrible, terrible tragedy has occurred off the coast of Long Island. Right now, we will send it back to WNBC's live coverage in New York City.
The Federal Aviation spokesman, Elliot Brunner, is being asked about the possibility of a bomb. He is saying that we can't discuss security issues at this time. The crash is the second major airline disaster in slightly more than 2 months following the May 11th crash in Florida of the ValueJet DC-9. And all 110 people aboard that plane, as you remember, died when it crashed into the Florida Everglades.
And we should remember there was early speculation about sabotage on that flight, too, about a bomb on the Everglades crash, and that proved not to be the case. As far as we know now, the focus of that investigation is on something that went haywire in the cargo hold. It was some spent oxygen canisters that may have somehow ignited and burned through the controls or incapacitated the crew in some fashion that caused the crash in the Florida Everglades. So
it's very hot and dank out there. Would that affect at all getting out of the airport on this evening?
Well, if you're talking about the flying characteristics of the aircraft, not really. It's a hot, humid night, and it makes it a little tougher to get a plane off the ground. But this plane was obviously well established in its flight. It was 70 or 80 miles from the airport, was no doubt climbing out. One of the possibilities that was brought up in some of the early discussion was that of a mid-air collision. I now have a representative of the FAA on the telephone, and we know the altitude of the aircraft, the last altitude before it started down.
Trouble spots around the world from terrorists who use nuclear,
Mr. Brenner, are you there?
weapons. So-called force
No, this is our second attempt to try to get through to Mr. Brenner of the FAA. Can you hear me, Mr. Brenner?
larger than the one that
Go ahead, please.
Okay, Mr. Brenner, this is Chuck Scarborough at NBC.
Hi, Chuck. How are you?
Fine. What do you know about this aircraft that went down tonight?
Our information is very preliminary. About 3 hours ago, about 8:45 p.m. Eastern, the Air Traffic Control Center in Boston, which is responsible for the airspace over Long Island and the vicinity there, lost radar contact with this flight. It was Flight 800 TWA. As you may have reported, it's a Boeing 747-100, one of the early models. This aircraft was headed from JFK to de Gaulle, and it was lost. Contact was lost over water border about 20 miles southeast of Long Island. Our very preliminary, and I stress that very preliminary information, is that it was a crew of 17 and 212 passengers.
Do you have any indication that there was another aircraft in the vicinity on radar?
We don't have any information of that sort here at the Operations Center in Washington.
And do you know what altitude the plane had achieved before it vanished from radar?
I'm sorry, we don't have that data yet.
I'm James Ross.
Okay, well, I thank you for what you've given us. And
WBB.
News desk, can I help you?
I think we'll leave the FAA to its very busy evening. Obviously, they are inundated down there in Washington with lots of calls about this aircraft, and they have precious little extra information at this point to share with us about what happened, except that the plane was being tracked by radar out of Boston and was lost from that point. That was the radar center that was watching its flight as it was embarking that transatlantic flight. And let's go back up to Tom Frick now. What do you see, Tom?
Chuck, just want to show you again, we've been showing you these flames. They appear to be, again, we are about 6,000 feet above the crash site. As we pull out here, just show you this crash site now strewn out over about a 2-mile area of the water. These flames, to give you a perspective, these flames, at 6,000 feet, these flames are still shooting about 50 to 100 feet into the air. It doesn't appear like it from right here, but those flames are shooting very far up into the air. It gives you an idea of how large the pieces of that fuselage still are. Also, when we first came on the scene, everything was pretty much in still a bit of an oblong shape. As you can see right now, everything's spreading out. It appears to be spreading out in the water, as even in the short time that we've been here, everything seems to be spreading out even further. As we take you back in, zoom back in as tight as we can, all of those bright yellow spots are debris. There are some rescue boats in the area. There are still quite a few rescue helicopters on the scene, but not quite as many as there were when we arrived here. You can see the flames and the pieces of the debris floating in the water. You can actually make out the high waves, how the pitch of the waves down on the sound itself. We're about 12 miles off, so you can tell how high the waves are. You can see the pieces of debris rocking in the water. We were telling you earlier that it appears to be a very clear night. It is a very, very dark night out here this evening. There's a lot of haze, and that's hampering a lot of the rescue effort in and of itself. It is a very dark ride for the crews to and from the shore itself. It's about a 12-mile ride offshore, Chuck.
All right, thank you. We got Ira Furman back on the line now, our NTSB investigator, retired. Ira, now that you see the pattern of this wreckage and what's happening out there and the flames on the water, what do you think?
We don't know what caused this. Obviously, we're talking about something that brought this aircraft out of the air. We don't know whether it was an in-flight upset, whether it was some mechanical failure aboard the aircraft, some instrumentation that caused this plane to come down. We see the aftermath, and that really doesn't tell me anything about the cause. We know this aircraft came from altitude. We also can assume that it was not a controlled flight at this point. That is, there really wasn't an attempt made to land the plane on the water. It was simply a crash.
But does it indicate to you by the cluster of the wreckage here that the plane hit the water more or less intact, or could it have been in several pieces?
Well, it's possible that, well, one, obviously, a 747 is very large, and it's possible that some pieces came off during the stresses of a very, very rapid descent. I worked an accident involved.
Welcome back. Jim Benneman here at the News Channel as we continue our special live coverage of the tragedy that has taken place off the coast of Long Island, New York. A TWA flight bound from New York's Kennedy Airport onto Paris and de Gaulle Airport tonight went down about 70 miles into the flight, about 12 miles off the coast of Long Island. At least 229 people are feared dead. Indeed, there are no signs of survivors, and we understand that there is the possibility of a very sad Portland connection. The News Channel's Kevin Roy's been following this story. He joins us with more from the newsroom. Kevin?
That's right, Jim. We now have it confirmed from Portland Police spokesman for the police chief, Lieutenant Cliff Madison, who says that one of their own may indeed have been on TWA Flight 800 earlier tonight. That would be Detective Sue Hill, a Southeast Portland resident. We are now learning that Detective Sue Hill was on a 5-week vacation to Europe. That, according to the police bureau tonight. They do believe that she was aboard Flight 800, which crashed earlier. Now, we have also spoken with family members of Sue Hill in Portland tonight. They say, indeed, she was on vacation. She was supposed to be on that flight, but they have not confirmed that she was indeed on that flight that crashed or that she is dead. They have spoken with TWA tonight, the airline. TWA has not been able to confirm for the family for certain that Detective Sue Hill was aboard that plane. But again tonight, Portland Police spokesman Cliff Madison telling the news channel that he is pretty certain and that the police bureau is confirming tonight that they believe Detective Sue Hill was aboard that plane. She is a detective for the Central Precinct. She lives in Southeast Portland, and as I mentioned, she was scheduled for a 5-week vacation to Europe. That is the latest that we know right now. Again, TWA does confirm that one Portland resident was on this flight, on TWA Flight 800 tonight, the airline not saying exactly who it was, but the police bureau saying it believes it was Detective Sue Hill. Jim?
All right, terrible news. Kevin Roy reporting live tonight from the Northwest News Channel newsroom. Right now, we want to send you back to WNBC in New York. Again, if you're just joining us, here's what we know at this hour as we come up upon 10 minutes to 9 our time. It is almost midnight back in New York. At least 229 people are presumed to have died when TWA Flight 800 crashed off the coast of Long Island tonight. That plane en route from New York's Kennedy Airport on into de Gaulle Airport in Paris. It never made it more than 75 or 80 miles off the runway there at Kennedy. It crashed again about 12 miles off of Long Island. TWA saying there were 229 people on board. Earlier reports by the Coast Guard indicated 281 people on board. We, at this point, will be sticking with what the airline is telling us. Indeed, no reports of any survivors at this point, but we are getting reports of victims, indeed bodies being retrieved and washing up now from the wreckage there in the Atlantic. We've been seeing just some unbelievable video, live pictures from the WNBC helicopter. You've actually been able to see this downed aircraft still burning in the waters off Long Island some 3 hours after it disappeared from radar screens. Just an unbelievable sight. And Ira Furman, a former NTSB investigator, talking to WNBC's Chuck Scarborough, a longtime anchorman, providing some of his insights on what might have caused this accident. And so we will go back right now to WNBC's coverage.
Beyond its capacity. We, of course, won't know what that is for quite some time, for certain, I would imagine, until they recover the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder. Ira, would this aircraft have had the more sophisticated, more detailed flight data recorder that would be helpful for the investigators?
Well, it would have a more sophisticated one than exists on many of the aircraft. It would depend in part upon when the aircraft was built, this specific aircraft, and what instrumentation was available at the time. But it would have a very sophisticated, comparatively, a very sophisticated flight data recorder. The cockpit voice recorder is the same in all aircraft. It's a 30-minute loop of tape, so that minute 31 erases the first minute, so you have the last 30 minutes. So, in effect, you would have everything on this aircraft clearly from the time of the takeoff roll, their ascent, and up to whatever it is that occurred.
We have heard no word of any radio communication indicating an emergency from this aircraft to the tower or to air traffic controllers yet. What does that tell you?
I haven't heard of any either, and I'm very curious about that. That would be an indicator of some upset of quite a magnitude that they wouldn't have the opportunity to be able to contact air traffic control, or it could mean that there was a kind of failure that just eliminated their ability to communicate in terms of radio operations.
All right, if you'll stand by just a second, MG Perez is on shore, and MG, they are recovering bodies.
Chuck, let me tell you about the organizational plan here. The East Moriches Fire Department has kind of taken control of this staging area. We just talked to a representative of the fire department who tells us that all the streets leading to the crash site obviously remain closed. At this point, they're staging all of the media at the fire department, and they're making arrangements to have a pool crew, what's referred to as a pool crew. That's one reporter and photographer will actually go down to shoot and report the story and bring it back to share with the rest of us. At this point, they're putting a plan into motion to begin actual removal of bodies and remnants of that crash, and the organization is taking shape rather quickly here again in East Moriches. Again, Montauk Highway remains closed in this area, and it should be avoided. Chuck?
MG Perez, thank you very much. And as we continue to look at this scene of utter devastation on the water, Tom Frick is on up top in Chopper 4. Tom?
Chuck, we just want to pull you out here and see if we can see some of the, we saw some of the flashing lights from the rescue aircraft in the scene here. Again, just give you a perspective of how spread out the debris is actually becoming at this point. A lot of the white lights that you're seeing, those white lights are actually rescue boats and aircraft in the area. Again, we're about 12 miles offshore, as we've been telling you. The debris itself is still flames shooting about 50 to 100 feet up into the air, but the debris appears to be spreading out further. Initially, when we came on scene, as we were telling you, it was in the form of an oblong shape. As you can see, the debris is still floating. You can see the waves itself, the motion of the waves lifting and rolling off the shore, lifting and rolling the pieces of the debris. They're still burning a lot of debris. Amazing that so much debris is still burning out here close to 3.5 hours after the actual incident. Again, we saw some flashing lights of searchlights of aircraft out here, of search aircraft on the scene, and you can see, you can clearly make out one boat just down here. I'm just going to take it just down inside. You can clearly make out the white lights on this one vessel just about 100 yards, 200 yards away from the actual crash site with large flashing lights. But it is so dark out here, it is so dark out here that we're told the helicopter crews are turning on their lights, they're checking the water, looking for anything that they can find in some of the rafts, and initial reports were that they were not finding anyone in the rafts that they were looking at. They were turning on their lights and then as quickly as possible turning them back on again, so that turning them back off again, so that they do not become disoriented out here. It is very dark and very hazy, and just over the water there are a few, they'd be hovering just a few feet off of the water. As we've been telling you, we're about 7,000 feet over the scene ourselves.
Tom, let me interrupt you for just a second here. I've got Governor Pataki on the telephone now, and Governor, what are your priorities?
Well, Chuck, the priority is, first of all, continue the search and rescue operation. We've got the Air National Guard, the 106th Search and Rescue Team in the air working with the Coast Guard to see what can be found. On the land, we have our State Emergency Management Office, the National Guard and State Police working with county officials to make sure that all preparations and precautions are taken. And then at JFK, we've directed the Port Authority to do whatever they could, everything they can, to assist TWA in dealing with the family and friends of those on the flight. Obviously, this is a tragedy of horrible proportions, and whatever we can do to assist, we're out there trying.
Governor, are you anywhere where you can see the picture that we have from
Yes,
the
I have.
What goes through your mind when you look at that?
I've been on that flight. It was years and years ago when I took the evening flight on TWA to Paris, and your heart just goes out to the families and the friends of those who were on the flight, and obviously we have to do everything we can. I know the report is grim, but still the Air National Guard is out there searching, and the slightest hope that someone might be found, and we have to do everything else we can to help the survivors, to help the families, to help the friends, and the state will be there with everything we can to make that assistance available.
What sort of aircraft does the Air National Guard have to deploy here?
We have two different types of aircraft up in the air right now. We have helicopters over the site. We also have a large plane, a C-130, that is capable of dropping life rafts and people into the water. At this point, they're over the scene, but they haven't had the opportunity to do that. And our prayers are still out there. We know it's a remote possibility, but if there's any chance of saving a life, the National Guard, the Air National Guard, is up there looking to try to do that.
As you know, we've been speculating, Governor, about the various causes of this crash, and it's pure speculation. One of them, of course, is an act of sabotage. And is there any worry in your mind now about security at Kennedy Airport?
There is, Chuck, and I don't want to speculate prematurely on what may have caused it, but we've seen the blast at the World Trade Center. We saw what happened in Saudi Arabia just slightly over a week ago, and the Port Authority has done everything they can to have the highest possible security levels at JFK, and we're just going to have to monitor the situation and be prepared to do whatever additional is necessary.
All right,
Governor George Pataki describing for Chuck Scarborough with WNBC in New York his thoughts as he looks at that terrible devastation, the just horrible devastation that we were looking at live via the helicopter there in New York. Of you, TWA Flight 800 was bound from New York to Paris tonight.
Pretty much like an airbag in an automobile.
Yeah. Right. And NJ, the people you talked to, the crew there, have the best eyewitness account that we've gotten so far, because they were up in the sky and they got a good view, a superior view of what happened when the explosion hit Flight 800.
Yeah, that's right. They were doing a routine training mission. The horizon, as you would imagine, fairly dark because there is no moon in the sky.
Now, do I
visible.
understand also, NJ, that some of those C-130s are back out there now, and we're just waiting for this one to take off, but there are some out there at work now?
We are attempting to confirm how many precisely they have on scene, as they refer to it. Like I'm just hearing something on the loudspeaker here at the base. They are saying right now that they've got at least one, possibly two, out there at the moment. This, to my count, would be the third one, Bill.
And is their job still to provide light with flares?
The flares are out there. Flares obviously do burn out after some period of time. I think what they're going to do is toss more down there, and what they do is if you can look very carefully, it's a little difficult to see, but if you can see in the cabin, just straight ahead at the nose of the aircraft, there's a series of windows. The crewmen will sit in those windows. They'll also sit in windows that are underneath the wing. And what they do is they specifically look through those windows with night vision goggles to look for bodies.
And NJ, I know the gravity of this situation is really sinking in for all of this. We saw a very emotional Mayor Giuliani speaking a moment ago out at JFK Airport. He offered a moment of silence. Is the gravity of the situation, I imagine it's certainly being felt where you are as well.
Now, these guys who go out and do this for a living, to some extent are like police officers. To some extent, they're like firefighters. They focus on the job at hand. They do what it is they've got to do. And in fact, actually, I want to look off to the side here, and if we can focus off to the side, you're going to see there's a Coast Guard plane that's about to take off to the side. Tell me if you can get a look over here. There's a Coast Guard plane that looks like it's about to take off.
NJ, I think they want you to get off the tarmac there.
We're going to back off the tarmac
You're
now,
in the way
Diana.
of that,
you know why that is. Obviously,
you're in the way of that C-130 taking off.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to get out of the way.
NJ, thank you so much.
We'll be back. We'll be back.
Jeff Gianola here in Portland as they push the WABC crew off the tarmac. Let's bring you up to the minute right now. 229 on board TWA Flight 800. Witnesses, and there are no lack of witnesses, as you can hear. Witnesses do report seeing a big orange fireball. And a sad note to this, it looks like Portland Police Detective Sue Hill was one of the passengers aboard TWA Flight 800. Tom Rinaldi is standing by at Central Precinct, the precinct Sue Hill worked out of. Tom, I understand they issued some sort of statement?
They have, Jeff. It is sad news, unfortunately. In a press release, Portland police have stated that it is believed that 45-year-old Sue Hill, a 22-year veteran of the Portland Police Bureau, was in fact on TWA Flight 800. She was a 22-year veteran of the Police Bureau. As we say, she worked in the homicide detail. She was planning on taking an extended vacation to Europe. Hill is the detective you see there with the short blonde hair. Obviously, devastatingly sad news for the Police Bureau, who have stated that, of course, they want to send all of their prayers and wishes, as we do, to Hill's family. Jeff?
Okay, thanks, Tom. Something that we need to clarify here about that flight. Many of the passengers arrived in New York on a flight from Los Angeles. Most likely that's where Sue Hill came in from. Once in New York, they switched planes. The plane they switched to was a plane that had arrived from Athens, Greece. It had been on the ground at JFK about 3 hours before it took off on this flight. Let's take a look at the map of the crash site, and it's estimated that the plane exploded somewhere in the air about 2 to 5 miles off Long Island, off the eastern shores there. And no lack of witnesses. That is a big recreation area, and maybe hundreds of people who saw this. Let's go back to WABC now in New York as we get the latest pictures and information from New York.
That there was any foul play involved, because nobody really knows at this point. But I think the circumstances of, you know, not a mid-air collision, but you know, the circumstances seem to indicate that there's a strong likelihood that that might be the case. So they're there to investigate, because some of the evidence they'll need to determine foul play will be coming in with the bodies as they come in from the crash scene.
Bob, what is Suffolk County called upon to do now? What are you trying to do?
Well, what we're trying to do at this point is we're using our Aviation and Marine Bureau, helicopters and boats to transport bodies to assist in the search efforts. Thereafter, we're securing the scene with our police department and our emergency medical services. Then through the night, the biggest part will probably be done by the Suffolk County Department, by the medical examiner's office, who will be moving as the bodies are transported from the Coast Guard station to Suffolk County's coroner's office, where investigation will be continued and autopsies will be done, and efforts will be made to see, one, if all of the remains can be identified, and if at the same time to see if there's any way that they can identify what the cause of the crash was.
I would assume, however, Bob, that Suffolk County would need a little help from other counties and other entities, because you can't possibly be ready for this kind of a disaster on an ongoing basis.
I asked the medical examiner that, and they said that if the bodies come in spread out over a period of time, which is more likely than not, then there's sufficient resources within the medical examiner's office. There's a large staff of pathologists that Suffolk's a big, it's 1.4 million people. It's the biggest county in the state outside of New York City, so it has resources. We have resources to do that. If all 200 and some odd bodies, God forbid there's no survivors, if they all were brought to the medical examiner's office at one time, they wouldn't be able to do it. But if necessary, they can call upon other agencies, the state and Stony Brook University and
Thank you, Bob, very much.
Thank you so much, our Suffolk County executive. We want to go now to Eddie Aruza, who is standing by live for us at JFK Airport. Eddie, anything new to tell us?
Well, Diana, it was a somber Mayor Giuliani who just addressed us a few minutes ago and gave us an update as far as what the city's participation is in this tragedy, and he said that the city's participation is both technical and emotional and spiritual. Technical in the sense that they are providing as much equipment as is necessary in order to help with the operations out in Mauritius. He said that they are sending helicopters, 3 helicopters, 20 divers, and several vessels from the police department's harbor unit. Now, as far as the spiritual and emotional assistance, that's taking place here at JFK Airport, where chaplains from both the fire and police department have arrived to try to console and try to counsel family members and friends of those who were on board. Now, this is what the mayor had to say earlier as far as technical assistance.
We have members of the police department, the fire department, EMS, CAU, units here to try to help the families that are here. Try to offer them any assistance that we can. We've asked 9X to send cell telephones, which they're doing. We have some of the chaplains from the police department and the fire department, and from the community assistance unit, both the mayors and the police departments, which unfortunately have experience in dealing with tragedies like this. I can just tell you that the mood at the rescue site is very serious and very somber, and they've recovered bodies, and they're bringing the bodies back to shore. And obviously, there's also an equal amount of concern here for the families who are going to have to live through a very difficult evening and morning and day tomorrow.
Now, a number of those families have been arriving here at JFK. They have set up operations over in the terminal where they're being counseled and helped and given the latest information that TWA officials can give them. Now, the mayor was asked whether the airport was under any heightened security measures. He said no, even in lieu of the upcoming Olympics. He did not want to speculate, he said, on what may or may not have been the cause, what may or may not have happened. He was also asked whether the majority, where the majority of the passengers on board came from, whether they were from our area or whether they originated somewhere else. He said that he looked at a passenger list, but that he could not tell from that exactly where most of the passengers had originated. Now, we are told that the operations here at JFK have not been affected, that flights should be arriving and taking off as scheduled tomorrow morning. That may or may not change. The best thing to do is, if you have a flight coming in or expecting a flight coming in or a flight leaving out of JFK tomorrow, to call your carrier to find out the latest. But right now, they're telling us that flight operations have not been affected. Bill, Diana?
Eddie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie.
Mayor Giuliani said that they're bringing bodies back to shore. That is the underlying reality. And some of the people who are having to face that underlying reality are at JFK Airport now at the TWA terminal. We go there, Jay DeDapper.
Well, Bill, this is one of the families just arriving now. You can see some of the lights put on them by TV cameras. They've been walking through little by little. It's actually slowed down quite a bit since the last time we talked to you. Just a handful of families have arrived here, and then they are taken on these buses to a hotel here at the airport where the whole crisis center is set up. We told you when we first got here that the first people that we saw, the first people arriving at this International Arrivals building, or the TWA International building, excuse me, were clergy, priests and a rabbi, and we had a chance to talk to one of the priests who had been here and who had talked to a number of the families of the victims. This is some of what he had to say, including the fact that there wasn't much you could say to these
How are they holding up, and what are they doing to deal with the situation?
They seem to be they only bring them over pretty well. They're determined that they're hopeful, you know.
And the father went on to say that most of the families that he had talked to as they had come in had heard about it, not from TWA or anything like that, but heard about it on the television or the radio. He said there was very little that he was able to say to these families other than to try and comfort them. They then, of course, got on these buses and have headed to the crisis center. The Red Cross has been on the scene the whole time, as well as the Salvation Army, and TWA, of course, has its own crisis people in place. Again, families do continue to arrive here, even at this late hour, 1:15 in the morning. They continue to arrive, and there are people inside that have been trying to take care of them. There has also been some confusion. People arriving here whose families and loved ones had been on earlier flights or on later flights, and there's obviously a sense of relief when they find out that their family members were not involved in this flight. But again, most of the families walking through here, most of the family members walking through that have family that was on this flight, there is nothing that they can say. They are so stunned that as they walk through, the reporters asking questions, there's absolutely nothing they can say.
Jay, do we know whether or not, and you may not know, were these mostly business travelers or tourists? This time of year, I'm venturing that it was a lot of tourists heading to Paris.
Well, those that we have seen coming through, and again, this is based on the family members and the little that we've been able to glean from it, they all seem to be tourist travel, students and tourists and that kind of thing. It is difficult to tell, obviously, just from that, and we've only seen maybe 30 to 40 family members at this point, and if the passenger manifest is above 200, then clearly there are a lot of family members. And keep in mind, this plane was going to Paris, and many people may have, in fact, been from France or from other places in continental Europe.
J.D., thank you very much. We're going now to the congressman for the area involved. It's the 1st Congressional District.
Okay, actually, we're going to interrupt because we do want to go back to JFK. TWA is holding a news conference right now. Let's take a look.
Could you wait a second? Hang on, just one moment. Give us a minute. Wireless. The guys are in. The guys are talking to you. Listen to me. Airport operations. JFK.
Right. Why?
Jake, you get out there. 20 seconds. That's right. One moment. Is everybody ready?
Okay, this is Mike Kelly, who's the Vice President of TWA. He had told us earlier that he would come on and speak to us a little bit after 1 o'clock. He's here.
Okay, I promised you I'd be back at 1 o'clock. I'm a little late, I'm sorry. We are trying to respond to this terrible tragedy as best we can. I would like to indicate right up front that I want to thank the Port Authority of New York for their outstanding response and assistance in this terrible situation. I don't think I have a whole lot of new information for you, unfortunately. I think that most of you understand how these things go at this particular point. It's late at night. There are rescue crews on the scene. We are trying to get information as much as we can to get TWA people to the right places. We have crews coming in from Kansas City, from St. Louis, and other locations to be on site, and most of the response team will be here first thing in the morning, probably by 8:30 at the latest. Our primary concern, of course, is the families and friends and acquaintances who are inquiring about this. We are attempting to respond to that. We have a number of very dedicated TWA employees assisted by the Port Authority specialists in trying to handle that situation. The problem we have right now at this particular point in time is they're seeking a lot of information that, quite frankly, no one has, and certainly we don't have either. We'll endeavor to find that and to provide that to them and to you as soon as we have it. And I think that's about all I can tell you right now. I'm sure you'll have a few questions. I'll take a few, and then I have to go.
Can you please give us the clearest picture, minute by minute, of the preparations for the flight, what time it left, what time it pushed back from the gate, and any communications that you had with TWA Flight 800?
I don't know that I can give you a highly accurate detail. You'd have to talk to the supervisor who handled that particular flight. I did talk to him. We've inspected our ordinary boarding documents. It appears to us right now to have been a perfectly ordinary international departure for TWA from JFK. Really no anomalies.
Can you describe the security and screening precautions that TWA has here? The equipment that they have, is it the modern, is it state-of-the-art, anything new that might have been added? And we're also hearing reports that there might have been some increased security surrounding the Olympics.
Well, the FAA mandates the security levels, and TWA, like other carriers, responds to that security level, whatever it is. I don't particularly want to go into the details right now because that's part of the security program. We follow the security program. Of any anomalies in our handling of the security procedures. We check that routinely. It appears to be normal. Let me take a question from somebody else.
Could you tell us what time the plane actually took off? You said it was scheduled for 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
They lost contact at 8:40?
I think it actually departed around 8 o'clock.
That's 45 minutes. That's going to take 45 minutes to fly 30 miles. What time did it actually take off?
That's the information I have, sir.
Mr. Kelly,
yes.
Relatives, how many relatives are here now? Most from the metropolitan area?
With regard to family and friends, I do not have a count at this particular point in time. I also do not know how many passengers or people were from the New York area. No, I really don't. I'm sorry. Pardon? I couldn't say positively. I am advised that there were, but I couldn't say positively.
Mr. Kelly, for your response team that you said coming in from St. Louis and so on, what are they supposed to do?
The response team is a wide range of airline professionals that have to do with aircraft maintenance, pilots, ground people, other people dealing with responses to the various things. We check cargo, we check baggage, we check passenger manifests, a really rather long laundry list, and we have people who are specialists in doing that. Well, it's certainly not a common thing. What we do as a standard part of our preparedness is that we have a trauma response program, and we identify individuals and put them through training, hopefully in the event that we will never need it. But unfortunately, in this particular case, it looks like we do. So we have people assigned to various tasks. They are called on and put into motion to come in and begin to take care of this thing. It's a very wide-ranging program.
The mayor was telling us that bodies have been brought to shore. Do you know how many have been identified at the site?
No, I don't have any information from the...
Mr. Kelly contacted the plane at 8:40, but it took off at 8 o'clock, so you can assume that the plane was in the air for 40 minutes before it went down. Is that what you're saying?
That's the information that I have. I haven't actually checked the logs on it. I'm sorry. We've been doing with some other things, but I'm advised by the supervisor that it was off at 8. There was some taxi time, and then the actual time it actually departed Kennedy would be a different time than the time it was off the gate. So we'll provide that information later on when we have it nailed down. I just don't want to get into it now because I can't give you facts.
Since you don't have a lot of information for the families, what are you able to do for them right now?
Well, really not much. We're trying to comfort them best we can and to give them contacts and people that they can talk to. We've had a large number of our employees here and other people volunteer to turn out to be with them, but quite frankly, we don't know what the story is. Their primary concern is, are there any survivors? We simply don't know.
Are they shocked?
Tell us anything about the crew, the captain, how long he's been flying, what kind of experience?
I don't have that information. I'm sorry.
How about the aircraft? They were 212, kosher dinners orders in that flight?
No, I don't have that information. I'm sorry. That'll be handled by corporate, and that'll probably be tomorrow or the next day as soon as they can verify that.
Will it be here or in St. Louis?
It'll probably be released out of St. Louis, although there will be people here in New York, so we'll probably have it in both places.
Kelly, how old was the aircraft?
I don't know. That was asked earlier. I'm sorry, I just haven't had time to get that information.
Other TWA employees, are there any counseling or anything going on for them?
Yes, we are attending to that. We're very concerned about that also.
What about police special groups? Any, like, high school bands, high school band from a small town?
I don't have any information about special groups or anything like that at this particular time. No, I don't have that, yes.
What can you tell us about the plane itself? It's an early series, 1970s, all that kind of...
Again, that's technical information I really don't have readily available, and I'm not going to speculate on it.
Do you know the plane originated from JFK, or did it come in from someplace else and then go on this other?
Oh, that was asked earlier. It came in from Athens. It was on the ground here for about 3 hours and then went out to Charles de Gaulle.
Sir, if my memory is correct, the airport in Athens, Greece, is the subject of some controversy in the aviation community and warnings about security. When you have an aircraft come here from Athens, what is the procedure for checking it, making sure that it is cleared out? Is there any possibility that something could be smuggled here from Athens? And is that a concern?
Well, I think every possibility will be examined. We fly into and out of Athens every day, and we have a standard procedure, not only for Athens, but for all destinations, to ensure that the plane is as secure as we can make it. Beyond that, I'm not going to go into details about how we handle that.
Were those concerned, those phone numbers again, are there any new numbers, or what is the number that we should be putting up?
Yeah, the best number for the press to contact is 314-589-3214, and that's just press. That is our corporate communications department.
Jeff Ginola in the Channel 2 newsroom. Let's bring you up to the minute on this disaster. The Coast Guard now is reporting lots of bodies in the water off Long Island. Families are arriving at JFK to receive word about their loved ones, and Boeing from Seattle is sending investigators to the scene. Channel 2's Ken Cole is standing by at PDX tonight. Ken, what's the latest?
Well, as it sits right now, Jeff, the Port of Portland is telling us that security here at Portland International Airport is considered to be at a normal level. Despite the crash back east, despite questions about what may have caused that crash, apparently airport officials here in Portland are waiting for word from the FAA before they beef up any of their security measures. And as of just a few minutes ago, Port of Portland officials told us that they checked in with the FAA, and those types of beefed up security measures have not been called for yet. The last time we had any kind of increase in security was about a year ago, when we understand that airports around the country raised their security level to what's called a level 3 security. That was during the trial of the World Trade Center bombing suspects, again about a year ago. That security included things like prohibiting vehicles from parking right next to the terminal here. You can see here tonight that they are allowing those cars to park here for extended amounts of time. That was not allowed just about a year ago. Also, they made an effort to check passenger IDs to match their tickets, and a lot of questioning of passengers about luggage. Did anyone touch their bags? Did anyone accept their luggage from anyone? Those kind of questioning still go on here at the airport. If you've done any flying recently, a lot of the airlines have continued that type of security measure. But again, here tonight, we understand that there is no added security yet here at Portland International Airport. Port of Portland officials are telling us that could change if the FAA gets any information specifically about what caused this crash. If this was an intentional crash back east, then that could definitely affect airport security around the country. But again, tonight, so far, that hasn't happened. Jeff?
Yeah, that is just speculation at this point. Ken Cole out at PDX. Thank you, Ken. And now the Portland connection. And it is a sad night here in Portland. We now understand that Portland Police Bureau Detective Sue Hill, she was 45 years old, and she apparently was scheduled to be on TWA Flight 800. The family here in Portland is apparently gathered at Sue Hill's mother's house, and sources tell us that have talked to the family that they are very realistic about this situation. They're trying to keep their spirits up. Once again, Detective Hill, 45 years old, Sue Hill, 22-year member of the police bureau. She was a homicide detective, worked her way up as a patrolman. We are going to join WABC now in New York as this news conference continues. Let's listen.
29 total people on the airplane. Do you know that there were no unaccounted for infants? That is not counted on the manifest or anything?
Not that I'm aware of.
229 still, right?
229 is a very good number. No. I'll take just a couple more questions, and I'm sorry, I do have to go. That includes the crew, yes.
As the night goes on, what will be the next important event?
Oh, no. The operations will continue, and we're taking additional security precautions now as a result of that.
Meaning what?
I'm not going to go into the additional.
Have you spoken to any family members yourself, and how are they holding up?
Well, I'd say the employees are obviously upset and concerned, as we all are. I've talked with as many employees as I can find in the facility on my way over here. We are concerned about that. Obviously, it's a very traumatic thing for us. We pride ourselves on the quality of our operation. We are persons, and this is a terrible tragedy. So we're going to deal with it the best we can, and I think that our staff is extremely professional in doing what they can.
Any threats?
I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. I have to go. I don't think we're going to do another one until the morning. The trauma people will be here by then, certainly no sooner than 6 o'clock, and probably more like 8 or 9. The corporate people will be here who can probably give you more details and will in fact know more details and can give you better information. At this point, I have to go. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Okay, that was Mike Kelly. He's vice president with TWA. Basically, he tells us it's a perfectly ordinary international departure this evening, one that ended in tragedy. We want to go to Andy Field now, who is live on the phone for us from Washington. Andy, fill us in.
Well, Diana, the NTSB investigators are scheduled to leave here from Washington in just a few hours. About 4:35 a.m. they will get on a plane, they will fly to Long Island, and begin a very difficult search for exactly what went wrong. The NTSB investigators have a go team that are basically on call around the clock. They're like firemen, hoping they never get a call like this. Now, at this point, with the little information that the FAA has here in Washington, their experts are telling us that it appears to be either a catastrophic aircraft failure or an explosion. It could have been a mid-air collision, but there's no reports of any other planes in the area or having been lost in this here. FAA structural experts told me tonight that it's extremely unlikely that a 747 would simply disintegrate on its own, even with an engine failure. Now, a few minutes ago, we spoke with the State Department's former anti-terrorism director, Larry Johnson, who says it's unfortunately still too easy to get explosives on board an airplane.
But there's no machine sniffing these bags as they go into the plane to say, yes, that might be a bomb.
Right. The sniffer technology, thermetics, Aegis systems, they can work up to a point, but you really need a broad base of technology, including CAT scan, X-ray, fast neutron, and frankly, there is no system right now deployed or available.
Now, that was former State Department Anti-Terrorism Director Larry Johnson. We also spoke with the woman who, just until a few weeks ago, was the FAA's Inspector General. She had just resigned in part because she was frustrated the government wasn't doing enough to prevent a disaster like this or the one that happened in Florida a few weeks ago. She has just submitted another safety report before she quit, telling the Transportation Secretary that the government knows how to prevent these tragedies, but somehow they continue. And here is what she had to say just a few moments ago.
Air safety is in turmoil right now because all of a sudden we have had a series of events which in some instances were predictable, but we didn't do enough to head them off at the pass. We've had a burned plane because of bogus parts. We've had a plane literally fall out of the sky into the Everglades, and it looks like because of lax measures on cargo and lax safety oversight. We've had people killed when an engine exploded and pierced the fuselage in an event which one official at the FAA said couldn't happen. And now we have a repeat of what looks like another bombing incident of another plane, which again, after Pan Am 103, we were promised shouldn't happen again. So it looks like we have continuing repeat failures of situations we are aware can happen, but the government has not done enough to stop them.
Now, again, it is far too early to understand why the plane apparently exploded in flight, but the government terrorism expert that we spoke with and the former Inspector General say that airlines and the government simply haven't been willing to spend billions of dollars for the most expensive bomb-sniffing machines, in part because they have not found any one technology that's foolproof they can spend all that money on and actually find it. And again, one of the other theories that they spoke about tonight, that if indeed this is a bomb, and again, no one has confirmed that, but if indeed it is a bomb, they have not ruled out the option or perhaps the possibility of a suicide bomber. Again, that is pure speculation. They have not said that they have no indication that that is what happened here. Again, it's just speculation on the anti-terrorism experts here. I'm Andy Field in Washington.
Pure
Bill,
speculation, Andy, yes, but it's very scary.
Thanks, Andy.
Let's go back to Long Island now to Mike Forbes, who is the congressman for the area involved, that is in Mauritius. He's the congressman for the 1st Congressional District. Mike, what can you tell us? I understand you've been in contact with the White House. Mike Forbes?
Well, apparently we don't have...
Mike Forbes, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Yes, I understand, Mike. Welcome to the program, Mike. I understand that you've been in contact with the White House?
Yes, we've been in contact with the White House and with the Secretary of Transportation, Frederica Pena, to urge him, obviously, to move his folks to Long Island as soon as possible. He's reassured me that not only is he on top of the situation, monitoring with the Coast Guard the efforts to try to get some recovery, but also he's assured me that his National Transportation Safety Board, as well as FAA officials, will be making their way to Long Island at the earliest point tomorrow.
Representative, it seems to us that things are pointing to possible sabotage tonight. Is that what you're seeing here?
Well, I think it really is, in all fairness, too early to tell. Obviously, eyewitness accounts that saw the explosion would suggest that it obviously is some kind of cataclysmic event. I have to tell you that I have worked very closely with the FAA officials on Long Island, our air traffic controllers. It is one of the most busy, obviously, facilities in the world. They do a tremendous job out of there, and so I have to tell you that frankly, it's hard to think that human error was involved here, given some of the eyewitness accounts. But again, it's too early to tell. We've asked that the Federal Bureau of Investigation also begin assembling information and taking a look at, obviously, the terrorist angle, if in fact there is terrorism involved.
So the FBI is involved in this investigation?
Well, I've been told that they are going to be reviewing it, obviously, and again, it's so premature to speculate at this point.
Okay. Mike Forbes, thanks very much. Well, we're covering an incredible tragedy, the crash of Flight 800, TWA Flight 800, which left JFK Airport this evening about a little after 8 o'clock and crashed into the Long Island, into the water off Long Island, the ocean off Long Island, about a half an hour later, about 8:30 or 8:40. 229 people on board, 217 passengers and 12 members of the crew, the TWA crew. It was a 747 jumbo jetliner, a plane about 25 years old. It apparently exploded from everything we've been able to see, and they are talking now about the possibility of a terror situation or a possibility also of a mid-air collision.
We have Tracy Loudon, who is with us now on the phone, another eyewitness. Tracy, I have to ask first, you've been watching this evening, having been an eyewitness and knowing that this is a very grim situation. What are your thoughts?
I think it's horrible that I just watched over 200 people die. What to think?
It's very sad. I think it's striking a lot of us this evening as we watch that this is a very terrible, tragic situation. Tell us what you saw.
I saw what looked like, I saw the plane at first, and then I turned around and I saw what looked like two big separate red flames go up into the sky and come right back down and fall right back into the water. And everyone was just looking in horror.
When you saw it, did you know what it was? What was happening?
It didn't click that I just saw the plane and then I saw the flames, so I didn't think about it until everyone started talking about it. And then I was just in shock. I didn't know what to say.
Where were you, Tracy, when you saw this?
I was at Smith Point Park.
Where is that in relation to Santa Mauritius?
It's in Shirley, about...
It's a little bit west.
About 7 miles west, or whatever, of the inlet.
Mm-hmm. And Tracy, you've been watching our coverage this evening. You've seen the pictures that we had earlier, showing the crash site and everything.
Yeah.
And I gather it has sunk in.
Yep.
And what you're seeing, what Tracy saw before, or what we saw before, is something recorded earlier from Newscopter 7, and that is the burning fuselage, we think, or burning fuel oil, burning gasoline from the jet in a picture taken a while ago.
Mm-hmm. Some significant things to tell you about this evening. As we again look at pictures recorded earlier, there were no distress calls from this jetliner, and there were no specific threats that have been reported as of yet. Security status was high because of the Olympics, but again, no specific threats have been reported. Obviously, there will be an intense and ongoing investigation. The NTSB will be involved. The FAA, we are also told that the FBI is involved, and I think that foretells what may be the cause of this crash here. I think for all of us who have witnessed this evening, this is a very sad night, and we are very sad for the families of the victims.
We're now going to Rabbi Schmotkin. Rabbi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good morning, I should say. You are putting together a group of people to help those who have lost loved ones on this plane?
Yes, the Lubavitch rabbis in the Hamptons, led by Rabbi Baumgarten and Rabbi Konikov, are at the scene with a group of clergymen who are waiting to be taken to the makeshift morgue to help identify the victims and work with the families to help ensure the most honorable dealing with the victims. They should be dealt with according to the proper Jewish law.
Were there, Rabbi, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but were there a number of Lubavitchers on the flight?
To the best of our knowledge, no. But, of course, there were quite a number of Jewish people, all of whom will be in need of proper services. Mm-hmm. And, as usual, the Lubavitch emissaries on the spot made themselves available immediately to the families and the authorities.
How many rabbis are coming together with you, Rabbi Schmotkin?
The Lubavitch group there is at this moment, I think, 7 or 8, but there will be more arriving, and there have been some other groups that are participating with them.
You say there were a lot of Jewish people on board the plane?
As far as we know, we don't have exact numbers yet, of course.
Yeah, but you believe that there were several Jewish people on board?
Yes, yes.
Going onward to Israel, maybe?
Some were scheduled to get off in Paris, and some to go to Israel. I should point out that, unfortunately, this time of year is considered a particularly inopportune time for the Jewish people, a time that tragedy is...
Why is that?
It's a time of mourning in the Jewish calendar for the destruction of the Jewish temple 2,000 years ago. And traditionally, we're wary at this time of unfortunate incidents.
You mean the destruction of the Jewish temple, of which the Wailing Wall was the remainder?
Yes, sir.
Rabbi, it sounds like you have a gut feeling about what caused this tragedy.
No, I don't think anybody is authorized to play God's advocate here and to explain these kinds of things away. It's our duty to work with the families and help them through their crisis and see what we can possibly do for them in any possible way.
And that's good work. Thank you so much, Rabbi, for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We want to go now to J.D. Dapper, who is at JFK Airport. He's outside the TWA terminal, where the families of the victims are arriving. J.D.?
Well, now it's, 20 till 2. We got here a little before 11 o'clock. Families only a few had begun arriving at that point. Another couple of dozen have come in since the last time we talked to you in the last half hour or so. The buses have loaded up. They're working on someone. Let me clear out of the way. They're working on someone here who apparently is emotionally overcome. A lot of people have been coming in, obviously crying and overcome in some way. This is apparently serious enough to delay this bus, and they have called in some medical personnel at this point. An interesting side note, there is a second flight that we have just learned about that has not left. It was scheduled to leave shortly after the flight to Paris, the flight that is missing and presumed down. A flight to Tel Aviv. Those passengers are inside. They cleared the plane off, and they have been doing security checks on the plane, top to bottom, fine-tooth comb, trying to find out if there's anything else or anything out there, anything on this plane. They've been taking off the luggage. They've been going through all of that very time-consuming. The passengers are still inside this terminal. They have not been allowed out there through the security clearances. All of this, obviously, as a result of some fear of whatever may have been the result of this flight right now. Let me clear out of the way again. You can see the woman who's apparently the woman who's having some difficulty obviously overcome, and again, as I mentioned, a number of different people have come through here who have been crying as they've learned of what has happened, and this woman in particular apparently having a particularly difficult time with it. The buses, again, are transporting people over to a hotel on the airport. That is where the crisis center has been set up, but the people are arriving here at the international terminal of TWA, so they're having to be transported over there. So there's really two different locations, and an awful lot of people, another family coming in now, an awful lot of people coming in, walking through this phalanx of media, and there's just nothing they can say. I talked to one man whose sister-in-law was on the plane. He's trying to find his brother. He says his brother must have driven right out to the island, out to the Mauritius, because he can't find him in either of these places. He says his sister was on his way to Paris, his sister-in-law, excuse me, on her way to Paris for business. He heard about it and was very broken up and difficult to believe that his sister-in-law was gone.
You must be surrounded by an almost palpable feeling of tragedy out there, Jay.
Well, as these people walk by, you know, look can speak for 1,000 words, and some of these people, you see the look in their eye, and you can feel their hearts, and it's a very difficult time. Difficult to imagine what it must feel like to lose someone, especially in a situation like this where it's so sudden. You get that phone call or you see that flash on the news, and wow.
It's very frightening. Jay, you mentioned about let me ask Jay one last question here, Bill. You mentioned, Jay, about the extra security precautions for this flight to Tel Aviv. For passengers who are going to the airport tomorrow, any indication that there will be delays because of heightened security?
No indication yet. This was the last flight that was scheduled to leave this TWA terminal, and obviously going to Israel, there is the special concern about security, and apparently some of the passengers on board were a little spooked. They heard about this accident after it happened, but before they took off, and one thing led to another, and they're not leaving any stone unturned. This flight, certainly, they are looking at everything before it is allowed to leave.
Okay.
We're watching WABC out of New York for the latest information on TWA Flight 800. Channel 2 News will come on just a few minutes early at 10:55 tonight for a special edition. We will stay with WABC until that time. Let's go back to that right now. And we do have an up-to-the-minute for you. TWA Flight 800 explodes. If you're just joining us, the latest information up to the minute. No threats are reported. However, there is talk tonight that the FBI may be called in to investigate. That is the latest up to the minute. Stay with Channel 2 throughout the evening. Once again, we'll come on at 10:55 tonight with a special edition. Now back to WABC.
Mr. D'Agostino, you're the first to speak optimistically of survivors. Do you have any indications that there are perhaps survivors?
No, I don't, but we're always keeping that hope up. We never know. It's dark out there, so hopefully something may come up.
Mr. D'Agostino, you said the wreckage was still burning. That's incredible after, what, about 5 hours since the crash?
That's correct. That's the information that I have at this time.
Do you know if that is the actual wreckage burning, or if it might be jet gasoline on the surface of the water burning?
That's also possible. I don't have any other information other than what I've told you.
In any event, there is still fire out there.
Yes.
Mr. D'Agostino, is speed of the essence in trying to recover the wreckage and the bodies? Are there currents out there that could hamper and make this much more difficult if they don't move quickly?
That could always hamper things. What we have going for us right now is that the seas are calm and the visibility is 100%. So that is working in our favor. And now what we have is the normal high tides and low tides. But other than that, everything seems to be working in our favor.
That's good to hear.
Mr. D'Agostino, you say the water is 113 feet deep. Is it to be assumed that the wreckage will go to the bottom rather quickly, as soon as the fire stops?
I would believe so, that depending on, what type of debris it is, there's some debris that will float, and the other debris, which is heavy, will sink to the bottom.
Mm-hmm. And you say the search area is a one square mile. Is that what I understand?
Right. That's what it's just increased. At first it was 1/2 mile. We've increased that to 1 mile.
Okay.
Okay, well,
thank you very much. Richard D'Agostino with the U.S. Coast Guard. Let's go back once again to Eddie Aruza. He is also at JFK Airport. Eddie.
A few minutes ago, the mood over at the TWA terminal where families and friends are arriving is very grim. as they arrive and they have heard of their families and friends on board this plane, they are not arriving in a good state of mind. There are several different agencies that are offering support and counseling over there. The city has sent chaplains in order to help the families, and also the Red Cross is offering assistance. And with me right now is Robert Wingate, who's a spokesperson for the Red Cross. Robert, thanks for being with us tonight. Tell us what your assistance over there is tonight.
Well, the Red Cross has a network of trained volunteers here in the metropolitan area who are counselors, and they're trained specifically to work with victims of disasters like plane crashes, hurricanes, floods, and things like that. Tonight, this is the worst of all possible disasters that we could see here. It's an airplane crash, and a lot of lives have been lost.
Tell me what the mood is right now over there, how your counselors are handling it.
I think there's a sense of shock among the victims. The families are just coming in now. They're coming in to meet with TWA and to find out what the process is going to be. And Red Cross counselors are there right at JFK to meet with those families and to talk with them, to help them talk through the emotions they're experiencing. Also, our counselors will be going out to Long Island tomorrow, wherever the bodies come in, to help talk with the families and help them identify the bodies of their loved ones. As you can imagine, this is a very, very difficult task, both for emergency workers and for the families to go through.
We've been talking throughout the night that there are more and more signs that point to this not being an accident, that it may have been a deliberate act. Does that increase whatever anger or anguish the parents, the relatives, the friends of those on board may have?
I think it may. It may intensify the sense of how awful this has been, how terrible this has been, and how could someone do this. But right away, I think there's the shock and the denial. I can't believe this happened. And did it really happen? I can't prove that. It's not right in front of me. There's this sense of shock on the part of the victims, and that's something that we have to confront and allow them to talk through. It takes a while to work through a loss. It may take years for many of these families.
All right, Robert Wingate, thanks so much for being with us here tonight. As we said, there have been chaplains and other personnel, priests, as J.J. Dapper, and rabbis that have arrived at the scene to try to help and comfort and counsel friends and families of those who were on board. And the Red Cross is also making an effort. It's part of the spiritual, the emotional help that is part of this process. There will, of course, be investigations, but right now what's important is to console and counsel those who need it the most at this hour. Bill, Diana, back to you.
Good advice. Thank you very much, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
Jack Walsh, our former pilot, and 747 pilot, is still with us, and I correct myself. He pointed out that the fuel for a jet for a 747 is not gasoline at all, but kerosene. And I appreciate the correction. But what do you make of this now? You've been watching this with us for about 3 hours, 2.5 hours anyway. What do you feel about it?
Well, my feeling is more and more they seem to be coming out with the idea that there was an explosion in the airplane. The only factor is what was it caused by. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to imagine.
They say it's not likely that there was a catastrophic failure of the airplane.
Of the aircraft itself, correct. Mm-hmm. Which means that if the fuel lines were to rupture somehow or other and then create an explosive force, that could do it. But that's...
Have you ever heard of a catastrophic failure on board a huge jumbo jet like that?
No, only similar to the ones that they had out in Iowa City and those places years ago, where with the hydraulic failure, something like that. I've never heard of an airplane that's in itself just coming apart, becoming unglued.
What do you think would be the conclusion? Maybe we must say it's too early to reach a conclusion, but what do you think if you were to sit around with some of your pals who were also 747 pilots some years ago, what do you think they would be saying tonight about what happened?
Well, they would probably be talking about security, which is going to get a good looking into in this case. They're going to talk about the maintenance. They're going to talk about the aircraft itself.
We had thought that there was a very important increase in security after Lockerbie, after the Pan Am 103 went down back in 1988. There was a massive increase in security?
Absolutely, yeah.
To your knowledge, is that massive increase in security still part of the normal operation of the airlines?
Oh, yes, it is. You go out to the airport now, and you have a tough time getting beyond the outer gates of the lobbies of the terminals. And they still screen the baggage going through as you bring it in. Now, what they do with the checked baggage, that's
it's another story.
Right.
I mean, they do. I'm
There
sure
are
they're
some
doing.
security
they do random,
checks,
I'm
but
sure
it's
they're
more
doing
random.
checking on that if they could.
Jack, we're going to break for just a minute because we do want to go back to Jim Dolan. We got Newscopter 7 back up in the air. They're fueled up and ready to go. So let's go live to Jim Dolan. Jim?
Yeah, Diana, we are back up in the air after having to refuel some. I want to take you right outside the helicopter right away to see our first new development, the first thing we've been able to see. What you are looking at now are the flares that have been launched into the air so that they can illuminate the scene outside. They're trying to see as much as they can see out there, and there are more lights on the way. It is a scene out there of searing carnage where the dull orange glow of the burning fuselage is all that's left of TWA Flight 800. It sits in about 115 feet of water in the Atlantic, about 14 miles south of the Long Island shoreline. The Army Corps of Engineers is sending out a flatbed boat loaded with more lights to help in the rescue and recovery effort. But there is very little to see out there. There's chunks of plastic and fiber floating in the sea of spilled jet fuel. That is what the boats involved in the rescue have found as they search for survivors. But there have been no survivors from Flight 800. No hint that anyone could survive the explosion or the fall from 13,000 feet. It is a rescue effort now fueled more by prayers and hope than by an actual belief that anyone could be found in the darkness. But this effort continues. There are still scores of boats out there looking for survivors and looking for any evidence in what clearly is now being considered a crime scene. Reporting live from Newscopter 7, this is Jim Dolan.
Don't go away.
Jim, can you hear us? Jim? We're well, apparently can't, but just to point out, this is a live picture now from Newscopter 7. What you're seeing on the top of the or middle of the screen, those are flares, and you're seeing a much darker picture now than we saw earlier. The fire, for the most part, is out, and those flares are trying to help illuminate the area so that the boats that are still out there can pick up debris and bodies from the crash site there.
So it appears that the fire looks to be out now, right, Jack?
That appears from that, but I also hope those flares, I'm sure those are parachute flares, and I just hope they extinguish themselves before they hit the water, because that kerosene is floating around there still.
Yes.
And it covers a wide area. I mean, you dump a couple 100,000 pounds of fuel out there, it really spreads out.
Right. And that is a danger. But is it a danger to more than the fuel floating on the water? Unless there are bodies in that area?
Well, the only danger is if there were bodies out there swimming around in that. There's a technique for getting through that stuff, but these people would know about that. But it would only add to the problem of the searching units to locate these bodies and bring them in.
I presume they have that possibility covered, I would think.
Yeah, I'm sure they would.
You would hope they would. Jack, going back to our discussion earlier before we broke and talked to Jim Dolan, draw some comparisons if you can. I'm sure you remember the night that we began reporting on Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. Does this seem to have a lot of similarities so far this evening?
Well, one thing with the Lockerbie incident that I recall, which gave me a positive factor on it, was that the controllers said that what they saw on their screen was a burst of debris flying all around. They picked it up on their radar screen. Now, I haven't heard that here on this particular incident. Now, and Jim just reported that the airplane was at 13,000 feet. He was climbing out pretty well. It wasn't a fully loaded airplane. No. So he was a little bit light, so he would get up very quickly. But whatever happened up at 13,000 feet is the key here. I mean, that's where the problem started, and whatever did happen there, coming down from 13,000 feet, I'm only guessing on this, but to come down in 1 minute would be a horrendous descent.
Yeah.
That would be a powered descent coming down, and it would take a little time. So it would seem to me that unless the crew were completely incapacitated, they should have been able to get a message out of some kind to the controllers they were working with.
But there was no distress call. And what I'm saying. What do you read into that then?
Well,
does that make it sound like a bomb?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's hard. You hate to say things like that,
sure,
but
I know
you don't know also whether somebody got on that airplane who shouldn't have been there with weapons, and the security would pick that up right away.
Yeah.
I know, just carrying my keys when I go through security, I have to put them in the bag or the dish there the guy has because I'll ring the bell. And certainly any kind of weapon would do that. So
yeah.
Coming down from that, if he was at 13,000 feet, that's the first time I heard that altitude. That was a tremendous period of time there for silence.
Jack, we want to thank you for being with us this evening. It has been great to have your insight, and thank you for taking the time out and staying up so late with...
Bringing you the spirit of the Northwest, we are KATU. Now, Channel 2 News.
Deadly flames light the night sky hours after the crash of TWA Flight 800, but the fire hides the true tragedy. More than 200 lives lost, first in the fireball, then in the dark, cold waters of the Atlantic. Among those feared dead, Portlander Sue Hill, her dream vacation ending in a nightmare. You've been watching WABC, the latest from New York, and good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Gianola with Channel 2's coverage. Steve Dunn has the evening off. We'll have more on the local connection to TWA Flight 800 in just a moment, but first the latest on the crash itself. TWA Flight 800 went down off New York's Long Island just after 5:45 Pacific time tonight. The flight originated in Los Angeles. It landed at New York's John F. Kennedy Airport, where the flight's 212 passengers switched planes. That plane then took off bound for Paris, but crashed a short time later into the Atlantic Ocean off Long Island near the East Mauritius. And that is the latest so far. Now, for the latest on the search for the victims, a little bit later, we're going to be switching to New York. But first, let's go to Tom Rinaldi, who's standing by with more on this local connection. And Tom, what can you tell us tonight?
Well, Jeff, I'm standing outside the Central Precinct in downtown Portland, where the news, unfortunately, is not very good. Police officials a short time ago issued a statement saying that Detective Sue Hill is believed to have been on board Flight 800, which crashed off the southern shore of eastern Long Island a few hours ago this evening. As for Sue Hill's family, they have gathered at her mother's home tonight. We understand, sources tell us, that they have, in fact, been in contact with airline officials, and they are trying to remain realistic but hopeful. Sue Hill is 45 years old, a 22-year veteran. She has spent the last 10 years with the homicide detail here in the Portland Police Bureau. She regularly worked high-profile cases with the Bureau. You're looking at her. She's wearing a blue coat right now. She has short blonde hair. You're seeing her work the TriMet shooting case last March in Portland. She is described tonight by Public Information Officer Lieutenant Cliff Madison as a friend, quote, as one of the most popular detectives in the entire Bureau. We're still trying to keep our hopes up. Sue Hill is married, but was traveling alone, as far as anybody can tell, on an extended vacation to Europe. Obviously, all police officials here are stunned at this local connection to the tragedy. They are trying to remain realistic, but they are also trying to keep their hopes up. Jeff?
I know, Tom, it's very tough. I know you tried to talk to some of the police officers tonight, and they were extremely broken up. Tom, something else. You're from the East Coast. You know that area well. Set the stage for us. The coastline off Long Island. Where did this plane go down? What kind of area is it? And why were there so many witnesses to this?
Well, Jeff, you know, a lot of people, when they think about New York City and its suburbs, they think of a very densely populated area, but they should understand that Long Island is 110 miles long, and where this happened is basically a fishing community. That's why you had so many people calling up TV stations, because they are familiar with being in boats and living their lives on the water, able to see the wreckage and see this happen. That's one reason why there were so many witnesses. Jeff?
Okay, Tom Rinaldi with the latest from the Portland Police Bureau. And once again, just to reiterate, Sue Hill, a detective with the Homicide Division, was apparently on that plane tonight. That is the latest information. That is a very, very sad note for her friends and her colleagues and her families. And our hearts go out to you tonight. There's a lot of other information concerning the TWA crash. As the information started coming into the Channel 2 newsroom, we started to put it in the up-to-the-minute form for you. And if you're just joining us, I want to share that information with you right now. Up to the minute, the Boeing 747 had 229 people on board, 212 passengers, 17 crew members. It is believed that at least one of the people on board is from the Northwest. Portland Police Detective Sue Hill, a 22-year veteran of the force, was scheduled to be on the flight to start a 5-week vacation in Europe. And we do understand tonight she was traveling alone. Right now, Coast Guard crews have every piece of equipment available on the water, searching for victims and any possible survivors. Now, you saw the pictures off the coast from WABC earlier in the evening, and the fires continuing to burn 4 or 5 hours after that plane went down. And we understand now most of the flames are out. There are a lot of fishing boats in the area, recreational boaters, and those folks were called in to help out, but as you heard, the Coast Guard says there are apparently no survivors. There is a hotline number tonight to call. Now, the number has changed, but this is the latest number that we have, and if we can put that number on that screen right now. Do we have that number for you? I don't have the number here in front of me, so if someone can tell me what that number is. 1-800 hotline number. Do we have that number? Okay, apparently I screwed this information up. The 1-800 number is wrong. There's apparently no 800 number for you to call, but a short time ago TWA said the number was wrong. And so right now, no number for you to call. TWA is trying to get that information to you. Now we want to go to New York, where we have a reporter standing by right now with the latest, Mr. Burkett.
Where President Clinton has tonight expressed a deep concern over the crash of TWA Flight 800.
Pilots to return from the scene described it as a sea of bodies with no signs of life. Hours after TWA Flight 800 exploded in the sky and plunged into the Atlantic Ocean off New York's Long Island, the fires on the water could be seen burning out of control from miles away. The 747 bound for Paris was only a few minutes out of New York's John F. Kennedy Airport and still climbing when it blew up. A National Guard plane was in the area when the plane went down. Crewmen described what happened.
And the crew was startled by a big flash of light in the sky. And we turned our attention and the aircraft over in that direction. Next thing we know, we see huge amounts of smoke off the ocean floor, and we proceeded over there within a couple of minutes.
The Coast Guard response to the disaster was swift.
The Coast Guard has commenced a massive and immediate search. Every cutter and every aircraft in the East Coast is being sent, in the Northeast coast is being sent to that area.
Initial reports indicated there were life rafts in the water. As the relatives gathered at the airport, they held out hope for their loved ones. But as the first wave of search helicopters began returning to base, it was apparent that there were no survivors.
I want to express our deep regret and concern for the passengers, our fellow employees and crew members, and the families on the ground. We will mobilize all the resources available to this company to do everything we can to handle the situation.
The flight had arrived in New York from Athens and had been on the ground, we're told, for roughly 3 hours. The FAA has so far refused to speculate on a cause. Foul play is not being ruled out tonight. We're live tonight in West Hampton Beach, New York, and Jay Burkett for ABC News.
Okay, that's Jay Burkett in New York. Now, our Ken Cole is standing by at PDX, Portland International Airport, with more on security measures here. Ken, what can you tell us tonight?
Well, Jeff, I can tell you it is business as usual here at Portland International Airport tonight. That's because security is considered to be at a normal or standard level tonight. The Port of Portland, however, is in contact with the FAA tonight. That agency will decide whether security should be beefed up here in Portland or at any other airport around the country. We should tell you again that has not happened at this point. And we can tell you always that security here at Portland International Airport has always been considered fairly tight in recent years, and that has not changed here tonight. I wanted to also show you a sign that had popped up here about a year ago. This is from Northwest Airlines, but it's similar with all the airlines. It references passengers and their need to keep track of luggage and especially carry-on items, which has become an issue here at airports around the country. I have talked to several of the ticket agents here at Portland International tonight. They say there are no major cancellations. They're not seeing people cancel flights tonight because of this issue. But again, the word here at Portland International Airport is that security is at a standard or normal level. That could change if they hear any more information from the FAA as far as some possible cause for this crash tonight. But again, at this point, it's all speculation. Jeff, back to you.
Okay, Ken Cole out at Portland International Airport. One Hillsborough family has concerns tonight. Jeremy Diesel is with this family, and he explains what's going on there. Jeremy?
Well, actually, it's a real sense of relief here in Hillsborough tonight. The McFarland family has been waiting for a call from their daughter and, in one case, sister Paula. She's a flight attendant for TWA, and they've been having a hard time trying to get a hold of her. Didn't know all night long whether or not it was her that was on this flight. And as it turns out, the best-case scenario happened here. They were able to get through. Paula called them from Los Angeles just literally seconds ago, and they know that their daughter's okay. But for other families all across the country, there is no knowledge at this point. People are having a hard time getting through to some of those TWA lines, and they're really not sure what to do. We talked to Lois McFarland, the flight attendant's sister, just before that phone call came. Here's what she had to say tonight.
I think you go into denial, and you say to yourself, we had just talked to her last night, she's going in the opposite direction, she's going west, she couldn't be on that flight. But then you start to think, what if she got pulled, or what if at the last minute she took another flight? And you start to wonder, and then as you watch the news reports, and the reality becomes, you know, no one seems to have survived, or they haven't found anyone yet.
Now, of course, the McFarlands do know, and they did find out right at 11 o'clock, literally just seconds ago, so there is a sense of relief here. But when they talked to Paula, she had just heard, and she is a flight attendant for TWA, and obviously, like many TWA employees, she's definitely in a state of shock tonight. Back to you guys.
Okay, Jeremy Diesel in Hillsborough. Thank you, Jeremy. We want to make something very clear here. As we said, some of the passengers started this flight in Los Angeles. They actually changed to a different plane in New York. That plane had arrived from Athens, Greece, just 3 hours before. The plane involved was a 747-100. Now, it's one of the Boeing's early models of the giant airliner, first produced in 1970. This particular plane had been in service for 25 years. It was delivered to Eastern Airlines back in 1971 and was immediately transferred to TWA. It can carry as many as 450 passengers. 3 of the 4 deadliest crashes in aviation history involved Boeing 747s. The worst happened in 1977 when 2 747s collided at an airport in the Canary Islands. 582 people died. In August of 1985, a Japan Airlines 747 crashed into a mountain, killing 520 people. 2 months before that, an Air India 747 crashed off the coast of Ireland, killing 329 people. The deadliest crash in U.S. history happened in 1979 when an American Airlines DC-10 crashed on takeoff in Chicago. 273 died in that crash. Boeing's engineers, of course, will be taking part in this investigation, but as aviation expert John Nance tells us, the chance that structural problems are to blame is very slim.
Just unprecedented to have a 747 come apart in the air because of any possible mechanical failure. The times that we have had a 747 come out of the sky in pieces. Lockerbie was a bomb. Air India a number of years before that was a bomb. This is, of course, the first thing you think of, but it is absolutely vital. And, you know, I always make this caution, but it's still vital to remember that there are many different things that could happen. You might have an explosion from something that was inadvertent, not a bomb.
Now, Nance says if for some reason the plane did come apart during flight, the pressure could ignite the fuel on board, creating that fire. Stay tuned on Spirit 2 for Nightline. Coming up, following this newscast, Ted Kopp will have the latest on the crash, along with analysis from some of the country's top aviation experts. And just to clear something up, earlier we talked about an 800 number. They were running that 800 number, TWA was earlier. Now they say that 800 number was wrong, so we will have a corrected number for you when TWA releases that, most likely early tomorrow morning. And now let's go on to some other news. A bizarre story of kidnapping and assault that began last night in Beaverton ended today in Elko, Nevada. Police say Sandra Maxwell, along with her 3 children, Brittany, Nicholas, and Ryan Colin, were allegedly abducted from their apartment by the children's father, 38-year-old Michael Colin. Late this afternoon, Colin was arrested in Elko, Nevada after driving recklessly through a construction zone. Sandra Maxwell's roommate, who was also injured during that attack, says that Sandra was afraid something like this would happen.
She told me Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning, she said, Diana, I'm so tired of living my life like this. I'm tired of living in fear.
Sandra Maxwell is listed in serious condition tonight. The children are all okay. Their father is being held in an Elko jail tonight. A Portland jury tonight has convicted a Vancouver man of trying to abduct a young girl in downtown Portland. Jurors found 27-year-old Stanley Bankhead guilty of 2 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of sexual abuse, and 1 count of harassment. In February, Bankhead tried to snatch a 2-year-old girl from her mother as they walked through Pioneer Place. Now, the mother was able to fight Bankhead off. He'll be sentenced in September. Convicted murderer Russell Obremski has lost a bid for a new parole hearing. Obremski killed 2 women in 1969. He was released in 1993 but ordered back to prison the following year on a parole violation. Tonight, the Oregon Court of Appeals has refused to overturn that parole revocation, meaning he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. President Clinton tonight has launched a new plan to use cellular telephones to make your streets safer. A plan is part of an anti-crime initiative kicked off by the president today. Under the plan, the cellular phone industry will donate 50,000 phones to neighborhood crime watch programs nationwide. The groups would also receive free airtime to make those phone calls. In Minneapolis today, Republican presidential candidate Bob Dole called for a return to basics in education. Dole unveiled what he calls his Education Consumers Warranty. The plan emphasizes the teaching of math, science, and languages. It also gives parents more control over what schools their children go to. Here in the Northwest, Colin Powell is insisting again tonight he will not throw his hat into the presidential election ring. Powell gave a motivational speech to hundreds of people attending a seminar at the Pacific Institute in Seattle. Several people at the seminar expressed disappointment that Powell did not run as a candidate. Well, tonight we know who wrote that best-selling novel based on the 1992 presidential election. The book Primary Colors is a behind-the-scenes tale of the 1992 primary campaign that some participants have described as strikingly true to life. The book's author was anonymous, but today, Newsweek magazine columnist Joe Klein admitted he is the author. The admission came after the Washington Post made the connection. Klein says he remained anonymous because he wasn't sure the novel was any good.
Coming up on Channel 2 News.
It's a battle over the beach on the Oregon coast where some residents say they're being fenced out. Tonight we learn how successful the efforts to save Portland's classrooms in crisis really were. And remember those puppies seized from an illegal puppy mill? Well, now the first has found a new home.
Hi, Ron Carlson here. More talk about Blazers deals tonight. We'll tell you the latest, and a resident from McMinnville makes it a long night for the Seattle Mariners. See you later for Channel 2 Sports.
I'm Ron Peterson, the KATU Weather Center. Temperature and rainfall records were set in the Willamette Valley today. Tomorrow, the weather gets a little bumpy. More about that in just a few minutes.
On the next AM Northwest, the one and only Dr. Ruth talks about what else? Sex.
Plus, we'll take you to Portland's best places to flirt. That's tomorrow at 9.
We'll investigate the mystery at Roswell, Sunday at 6 on Town Hall.
Do cars really sell for less in Vancouver? The Vancouver auto dealers believe it, and more than a few of you do, too. People are buying in record numbers, taking advantage of the big savings available in Vancouver every single day. So when you're ready to buy a car or truck, come and see us, or call our convenient Vancouver Auto Dealers hotline, 222-2222. See if we can save you some money. See if you don't believe, like we do, that cars simply sell for less
in Vancouver.
Check it out.
On the next Rosie O'Donnell Show, Rosie welcomes X-Files star David Duchovny. And tomorrow, Mike Myers. On the Rosie O'Donnell Show.
Tomorrow at 11 on KATU Spirit 2.
This is the new TV Guide. Just open it up, and boom, you're there. Inside the Summer Games issue, a 2-week pull-out guide with schedules, expert predictions, plus a behind-the-scenes look at the athletes. When you want to be there, get inside. TV Guide.
How to get lucky. Gina's Trifolium, the 4-leaf clover. There are easier ways to get lucky. Cow Creek Indian Gaming Center. Our new Seven Feathers Hotel opens August 3rd. Make your reservations now.
Sir, we've noticed an unusual concentration of mass in this area. It could be a buildup of tanks. Can you get me a count? Sir, there appear to be thousands of metallic units. Listen, mister, get me a closer look now. Magnifying and enhancing.
It's no secret how Thomason sells so many cars for less. We have acres of them. If you don't come see me today, I can't save you any money.
In the spirit of the Northwest, Channel 2 News continues.
Welcome back, everybody. We are giving you the latest information on TWA Flight 800. It crashed off the Atlantic Ocean off New York, Long Island to be exact. 229 people feared dead. One of the first reporters, a helicopter reporter for WABC, flew over the area. Let's take a look at that report.
We are, in fact, at the scene, as close to the scene as the authorities will allow us to get right now. There is a 10-mile area around the scene around which we are not allowed to get. But let me go outside and even this far away show you what we can see. And what you see out there in the distance are, and we're going to get a little bit closer right now, are some of the lights of the boats in the water that are involved in the rescue effort. There are scores of them out there right now. It is an enormous rescue effort between the National Guard and the Coast Guard. They are searching an enormous area. Of course, when a plane blows up at that altitude, about 12,000 feet, the area that they have to search is enormous. When we first started out on our way out here, they were asking all helicopters to engage in this search effort, this enormous search effort. By the time we got very close to the scene, they were calling us off, saying that they had too many helicopters in the air and that we needed to stay away from it. They imposed these restrictions, and that's where we are right now. We are hovering as close to the scene as we can get. If we pan off just a little, we may be able to see some of the other helicopters that are involved in the search effort. There are a number of boats, as I've said earlier, but there are also a lot of helicopters using searchlights for the area.
Okay, the helicopter turned there and we lost the signal, but there were many, many people who witnessed this explosion, as that's what they called it, and here was one of those witnesses.
It looked like a flare at first. It was just a small little ball of fire. It looked like somebody sent up a Mayday flare or something like that. And then it was just like, boom, it just took off. It looked like a huge Christmas tree of fire coming down towards the water. And it just slowly did it, sort of like the shuttle. Slowly went down towards the water on fire, and it just like left like a grayish trail of smoke going towards the water.
That was just one of many witnesses. Many reported seeing the exact same thing. And word that a Portland police detective, Sue Hill, was aboard TWA Flight 800. Tom Rinaldi is standing by at Central Precinct, where Sue Hill worked out of. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Jeff. Obviously, hearts here are very heavy, as officials here have stated that it is believed that Sue Hill, a 22-year veteran of the Bureau, was in fact on ill-fated TWA Flight number 800. As we say, a 22-year veteran. She started out as a patrol officer and worked her way up. She worked in the Drugs and Vice Squad, most recently working out of Central Precinct with the homicide detail for the past 10 years. She regularly worked very high-profile cases. We spoke with Public Information Officer Lieutenant Cliff Madison, who described Sue Hill as a personal friend, one of the most popular detectives in the entire Bureau, and said obviously police officials are doing their best to keep their hopes up, and her family is described as realistic, but of course keeping their hopes up until they hear anything definitive. Obviously a sad time here at Central Precinct. Jeff?
Sure is. Thank you, Tom. Let's cover some other news now.